Chapter 211. After the DG Destined spent some time with Thalia, Percy, Nico, and Bianca and got to know each other better, they were given the tour of the big house. The DG Destined were, of course, excited for this tour. After all, this is the home of the Greek pantheon now and the demigods who Harry adopted. By getting to know Thalia, Percy, Nico, and Bianca, the DG Destined were able to tell that the people living in the big house are kind and fun individuals, a thought that was proven right when the tour began. The DG Destined got to meet and hang out with all sorts of demigods. From the sons and daughters of Hephaestus, demigods who were the craftsmen of the family, the blacksmiths, the engineers, and architects. These demigods weren't only members of the crafts guild, but they also had a massive garage in the big house. A place where all the grease monkeys that are the demigods of Hephaestus can build anything they want. Harry always makes sure to bring them all kinds of new toys, like cars, robots, weapons, and even actual toys, all so they can have all the fun they want making and fixing things. Then, there were the sons and daughters of Hermes, who are the fun and mischievous type. They're the crafty and pranking members of the family. It was a fun time speaking and getting to know some of them, even if they tried to prank Harry, only for the dragon god to laugh it off, and stay colored pink and sparkly for a while after. There were also the sons and daughters of Athena, the book-smart and wise of the family. Despite being bookworms and nerdy, they were still kind and patient with the DG Destined and helped them by answering any question they had. Then there were the wild and powerful sons and daughters of Ares. These guys are all about battles and muscle, but despite that, they were also friendly and cheerful. Sure, some came off as arrogant at first, but the DG Destined took that in stride. Though they were surprised when they all suddenly attacked Harry, only for him to laugh and mop the floor with them, quite literally too. Harry used his demigod children to wipe the floor clean. But even then, the sons and daughters of Ares laughed it off and wore their bruises with pride. Seraphal smiled at the scene, before explaining how much these demigods had changed over time. They're far more relaxed and happy than what they used to be when their father was still alive. Even the sons and daughters of Aphrodite were fun to get to know, plus the male and female DG Destined received some excellent tips about looking good and fashionable, though the girls had to drag TK away from Harry's daughters. The guy was getting his flirt on, which just amused Harry, Yasaka, and Seraphal, but what really made the DG Destined happy to see is how Harry himself hung out with all his children and spent time with them. He always did something to show his affection, whether it was fighting with his Ares children, letting his Aphrodite children paint his nails, or cutting his hair. He even helped some of his children from Hephaestus to build some stuff. Books were gifted to his Athena children and he played video games with his Hermes children. Wherever Harry went or whoever he spent time with, the dragon god always had a smile on his face and pure adoration for all his children. And in return, the demigods loved and cherished Harry. It was evident with how happy they were to just see him and spend time with him. Ari, Sherry, and Lily all spent time with everyone as well and joined in the activities, and the demigods all spoiled their little sisters and cousins all the time, which is why they come to visit often. But all of this just showed that no matter what, Harry always had time for everyone. Eventually, the DG Destined were able to meet their first Greek deities. Rhea had appeared out of nowhere and offered cookies and milk to everyone. At first the DG Destined didn't think much of Rhea until Ari called her Granny Rhea. That surprised the DG Destined, because Rhea doesn't look like a granny at all, and when the DG Destined voiced that out, Rhea giggled and then told the DG Destined that she is a titan and thus a very old deity. The DG Destined were of course, awed and shocked. They had a real and true titan around them for a while now and they never even noticed. Harry chuckled at the DG Destined's expression, finding their reactions funny and amusing. "What were you guys expecting?" was what Harry asked soon, after laughing. Ty rubbed his head and sighed, "I don't know. I mean, I personally didn't know what to expect when I would meet a deity. I just didn't expect Rhea to be." Rhea smiled and then said, "A normal-looking woman baking cookies for her grandchildren." Despite Rhea not being upset or offended by Ty's words, the DG Destined of Courage couldn't help but wince, because it sounded very rude. "Sorry, it's just not what I expected." Rhea just giggled and waved her hand, dismissing Ty's apology. "Oh dear, I don't mind, honestly, this is my mortal disguise. All gods and goddesses have one, that way we can walk around on Earth and not kill hundreds by our presence alone, well, except the Potters. They can be in their true form all the time and not affect the world around them." I think Harry called it, perfect control, I believe, a skill that grants, just that, perfect control of everything. The DG Destined all turned their heads towards Harry, who shrugged and grinned. "The Potters are just built different, plus that skill is a necessity for us now. we deal with powers beyond normal comprehension, and that's all kinds of dangerous. Sirafal nodded, that, and all of us have gotten way more powerful, without perfect control, we could easily destroy the planet by accident. Yoliai turned her head towards Eri, Sherry, and Lily. She stared at them in curiosity, which they noticed. Eri just grinned and waved at her, while Lily smiled. Sherry shrugged and then said, I'm still not at a level where I need that skill, but Eri does. Lily nodded, especially because she likes to use big and showy magic. Besides, she's a dragon god now. I'm at best a heavenly dragon in rank, while Sherry is one as well. Yasaka giggled and gave Lily a head pat, which had her smiling. Among the Potter children, Morgan, Hope, and Eri are the ones who need perfect control, though they are careful and very responsible with their power, most of the time. Sirafal giggled and then piped in, we're not any better though, we're always destroying something or just blasting things away. Yasaka sighed and shook her head, don't remind me Sirafal, add to that, whenever Ereshkigal tries to cook and we have Armageddon happening all the time at the house. Harry chuckled, it's always fun though. Yasaka deadpanned at Harry while dryly speaking her opinion of Harry's words, most of us died at least 4 times while fighting that abomination Ereshkigal and Shin made last time. Harry winced at the reminder of one of his most powerful foes, that monster, created by the combination of Ereshkigal and Shin's cooking, was a real danger to everyone. The thing was even able to kill off Ice twice. And she didn't even know how that happened. On the upside, everyone got to meet death, though the conceptual being was laughing her ass off at them, for how they died. Harry shook his head and then shrugged, either way, most gods and goddesses in Neo-Kyoto stay in their mortal forms. In fact, you could have met a god or a goddess right now, and not have noticed. Harry turned his head towards his side and smiled at a small girl, who was just chilling there and listening to everything being said in amusement, right Hestia? The DG Destined gaped at the little girl and stared at her in shock, while Hestia just giggled and nodded, yes, I've been here the whole time and no one even said hi. That's kinda mean you know? But then again, I was being too quiet. Hestia smiled in amusement as she stared at the expression on the DG Destined's faces. She had walked over when her mother began to give cookies out to everyone and was able to even get 2. But no one even noticed her and so, she chose to just eat her cookies and listen to everyone's conversation in silence. Harry smiled at Hestia, happy about how much she had changed over her time in Neo-Kyoto. When Harry met her, she was mostly quiet, sad, and very tired. The entire situation with the demigods and her family, the Olympian gods, had taken a toll on her. Not a surprise there, since Hestia had to live her long life watching the demigods being neglected and killed, while her family argued, fought, and plotted against each other, her domain being family and home. Meant that she was deeply affected by that situation for so many centuries, but now that Hestia lives in Neo-Kyoto, gets worshipped here, and lives a happy life surrounded by smiles and laughter, has made her demeanor shift into a cheerful and playful one. It made Harry very happy for her. Suddenly Hestia was lifted by the armpits and then hugged tightly by Mimi, which made the goddess blink in surprise, not expecting such a thing to happen to her. Mimi squealed and then hugged Hestia, you're so adorable. And you're a goddess too. That's so cool. Everyone's sweat dropped at Mimi's action, well except Hestia. She just giggled and gave Mimi a head pat, which looked hilarious, since she was in her child form and being lifted by the armpits, all the while she gave Mimi the motherly treatment. Mimi soon let Hestia down. The goddess of the hearth smiled at her and then asked her a question, and who might you be? I don't believe I've met you before nor seen you around Neo-Kyoto. Mimi brightly smiled and introduced herself to Hestia. The rest of the DG Destined did as well, since Hestia seemed curious about them too. After that, Harry spent a few minutes explaining to the Greek goddess, who the DG Destined are and what they were doing in Neo-Kyoto right now. After that explanation, Hestia hummed a soft tune as she thought about what Harry just told her about the DG Destined. She then turned her head towards them and said, so you're establishing a new guild, one centered around Digimon. Tai nodded to Hestia, that's right. Harry and Izzy came up with an idea, a sort of way to help and guide the new generations of the DG Destined, especially because more keep popping up from around the world. Carrie smiled and then said, plus, it turns out that we're not exactly human anymore, so working from Neo-Kyoto and learning about what we are and what we can do, will come a long way into helping the rest of the DG Destined. Hestia tilted her head and seemed a bit confused about Kari's statement, not human. Harry quickly explained to Hestia about what the DG Destined have become. Yes, it turns out that the DG Destined are what we're calling hybrid digital beings. It's something new, so there's still a lot we don't know about it. But, that's one of the reasons we decided to open a Digimon Tamers Guild. It would both help the DG Destined and help us learn more about what this new race is capable of. Hestia nodded, understanding the situation. She then turned her head towards Thalia and gave her a smile. Then, I think it would be best to begin with your quest, Thalia. I have a feeling that we'll see some amazing. Thalia smiled in excitement, not only because Hestia's words foretold of something happening, but because she herself wanted to take on the DG Destined and their Digimon. But, Thalia had to first make sure that the DG Destined were ready to take her on, so she quickly turned her head towards Tai, and then asked, "What about it? Do you guys feel like sparring?" Tai grinned and then nodded, "Sure. That's why we came here to begin with." Thalia grinned. Suddenly Percy walked up to Thalia's side and smiled, "Then how about I join in the fun?" Bianca walked up to Thalia's other side and smiled, "This sounds like a fun activity, count me in." Luckily for the DG Destined, Nico shrugged and grabbed another cookie. "I'll pass, I don't feel like fighting today, though I will watch, it sounds like it's going to be a fun event." Everyone nodded to Nico, while Percy, Bianca and Thalia stared at the DG Destined, who stared back at the three demigods, whose blood fathers are the big three of the Greek gods. A challenge has been given and answered. Harry smiled and then said, "Then, let's take this to the Potter basement, there's plenty of room there." Everyone nodded in agreement to Harry's suggestion, so the dragon god opened a dark corridor to the Potter's basement. Everyone present in the group quickly walked through the dark corridor, ready to see some action. A few minutes later, Eri, Sherry, Lily, Nico, Harry, Yasaka, Sirafal, Hestia and Ria all took off flying and stayed in the sky to see the battle that was about to happen. This way, they wouldn't get in the way and they'll be able to watch the battle without issues, from high in the sky. Meanwhile, the first and second generation of the DG Destined stood in front of Thalia, Percy and Bianca, who stood before them ready for battle. The DG Destined soon took out their smartphones and summoned their Digimon partners. Agumon, Gabumon, Bioman, Palman, Tintaman, Pataman, Gamaman, Mikuman, and Gataman appeared in front of their human partners in flashes of digital energy. Veman, Worman, Armadilloman and Hawkman appeared in front of their human partners as well. All the Digimon had sensed the tension in the air and were ready to fight, though, at first, they were confused as to why they were summoned to face what they thought were humans. That is, until Thalia, Percy, and Bianca suddenly summoned their weapons to fight, while letting out some of their divinity flow out of their bodies. The Digimon's instincts forced them to take a step back and stand in front of their human partners in concern. Meanwhile, the DG Destined weren't faring any better. The pressure flowing out of the three demigods in front of them was something overwhelming, something that the DG Destined had no experience dealing with. Sure, they have faced mega-level Digimon of considerable powers before, but nothing of this level. The DG Destined along with their Digimon partners were now feeling intimidated and wary. Izzy frowned as he began to nervously sweat. "This is crazy, I've never felt this frightened, even when we were facing a Pokélimon." TK nodded, though he looked rather nervous while doing so. "This is intense, and I think they're holding back." Davis gritted his teeth. He then looked towards his hands and saw them shaking. Damn it. Ken noticed Davis' predicament, but he found himself unable to do anything about it, as he was also frozen in fright. But despite feeling angry at himself for being afraid, he was also worried about everyone else. The rest of the DG Destined began to profusely sweat, as they watched the demigods get ready. Thalia twirled a beautifully crafted spear, while blue lightning danced around the blade of the spear, crackling and lashing out at everyone around Thalia. Percy stood beside her, completely unaffected by the blue lighting, a sword and shield in hand and ready to fight. However, the DG Destined could see water begin to gather around Percy, as if drawn to him. Bianca swung a pitch-black scythe, a weapon made by her dad Harry and blessed by her blood father Hades. Nico received a pair of black daggers as well, but both had been training with their weapons for a while now, and it shows, with the way Bianca could easily swing her scythe. Harry stared at the DG Destined. He was a bit worried about them. This was their first time facing something besides another Digimon, and they were now witnessing the sheer difference between a wild or evil Digimon to a supernatural being. This was their first taste of how different things are in this world, and a part of him wondered if they were ready. Yasaka suddenly grabbed Harry's hands, causing him to move his gaze towards her. Yasaka softly smiled at Harry and then said, "They're going to be fine, Harry. They are your friends after all, and if you believe in them, I'm sure they will rise up to this challenge." Sirafal grinned and then pointed at Tai. "They already are, look at Tai." Harry, turned his head towards Tai and widened his eyes as he watched him take out a pair of old goggles from his pants pockets. He immediately recognized them as the goggles he had made for him a long time ago, goggles enchanted with a simple self-cleaning and auto-repair enchantments. It was one of the first things Harry had ever enchanted. At the time, he had wanted to throw them away, thinking them too simple and generic, but Tai had seen them and taken a liking to them. Seeing this, Harry decided to give the goggles to Tai. The DG Destined of Courage has since then worn them as his symbol, as the second leader of the DG Destined, so, seeing Tai putting on those old goggles again, brought a happy and proud smile to Harry's face. Tai had noticed his friends being scared and he couldn't blame them. After all, the pressure coming out of Thalia, Percy and Bianca was heavy and frightening, but there was a reason why Tai has the crest of courage, so when he noticed his friends being afraid, he decided to do something about it. So he reached into his pocket and took out a pair of goggles from within his pants pocket. He stared at the goggles for a few seconds before smiling at the memories associated with these goggles. Still smiling, the DG Destined of Courage put the goggles on his head and stepped forward. He stood beside Agumen and grinned. "Let's do this, Agumen. We've faced danger before, this isn't any different." Agumen's eyes widened, but he soon smiled and nodded. "Let's do this as always, Taiki. Together." At that moment, Agumen and Tai's hearts beat as one. His vital bracelet began to glow for a second before settling down, but Tai was too distracted to notice this and instead, issued orders to his Digimon partner, "Go. Agumen." Agumen took off running at high speed towards the demigods. Thalia, Percy and Bianca widened their eyes in a bit of surprise, having not expected Tai and Agumen to recover from the pressure they were letting off. Agumen narrowed his eyes and then took a big breath as he continued to run towards the demigods. Pepper breath. Agumen spat up a series of small fireballs at the demigods. Percy quickly waved his arm to the side and a wall of water rose in front of himself. Thalia and Bianca, the fireballs collided against the water wall and exploded instead of being put out, which let out a few explosions of steam to go off from the collision between opposing elements. But Bianca swung her scythe to the side and dispersed the steam, only to have to dodge a claw attack from Agumen, who had jumped towards the demigods to attack them, while they couldn't see him. Bianca immediately attacked Agumen after dodging his claw attack, but a voice suddenly called out from in front of them, "Not going to happen." Marching fishes. From the few water puddles around Agumen and Bianca, a few schools of fishes emerged from the water and launched them at Bianca, who squeaked in surprise, having not expected an attack like that. The fishes soon collied against Bianca, who panicked a bit and began to walk backward, while waving her arms around wildly. Being surrounded and engulfed in colorful fishes was not all fun to her. Eek! They're slimy. No. Percy and Thalia sweat dropped upon hearing Bianca's exclamation. Percy soon sighed and shook his head. They just had to hit her with her one and only weakness. Hey! Thalia wanted to laugh, she really did, because Bianca hated anything slimy with a passion. It's why she never approaches Mr. Goop, or Rimuru when he's in his slime form. She's just not a fan of anything slimy. However, Thalia didn't have any more time to wonder if she should laugh or not, for two new voices suddenly called out an attack. Spiral Twister. Blue Blaster. Thalia jumped away from a green spiral of wind and a blast of blue flames. Percy tried to jump away too since the attacks were heading his way as well, but then another voice called out of nowhere, "You're not getting away. Poison Ivy." Percy soon found his legs wrapped around by Palman's Poison Ivy, stopping him from jumping away. What the hell? That was as far as Percy could say before being blasted by Gabuman's Blue Blaster and Bioman's Spiral Twister. Thalia gaped at how Percy was blasted, but Veman suddenly appeared in front of her, along with Mikuman. Veman quickly pushed himself off the ground with his legs while calling out the name of his attack, V-Headbutt. Oof! Thalia received Veman's attack right in the stomach. She didn't move of course, but she certainly felt it. Mikuman jumped above Veman, as he landed on the ground and attacked Thalia with her claws. Scratch! Thalia raised her spear and blocked Mikuman's attack. Sparks flew everywhere, but Thalia stood strong. However, she wasn't given any time to relax. Take this! Diamond Shell! Armadilloman rolled into a ball and slammed against Thalia's back, which caused her to lurch forward with a grunt. Thalia quickly recovered and then stomped on the ground, sending a shockwave all around her and sending Veman, Armadilloman and Mikuman skidding back, and away from her. Meanwhile, Hestia intently watched the ongoing battle. When she got introduced to the DG Destined and was told about their adventures with Harry, she had felt something special within them. She didn't quite know what it was though. If she had to describe it, it would be something kin to solidified emotions. So, she decided to push forward the spar between her nieces and nephew. As curious as she was about what she felt, this was also something that she felt, the DG destined needed, and it seems she was right. When Tai stepped forward, she could feel courage in physical form flare within his heart, something she has never seen before. You can be courageous, you can feel courage and draw strength from it, but to actually call upon a solid conceptual form of courage, was something she had never seen before. But that wasn't really what she was so interested in. No, it was the fact that as soon as Tai stepped forward and encouraged a human to fight, the other DG destined soon followed. They were so afraid a second ago, but all it took was Tai stepping forward and pushing that fear away, for all of them to step forward ready to face anything. She was utterly impressed by their bonds, both to each other and that of their Digimon. Something in her told her that something amazing was going to happen, and she wanted to see it. For some reason, the idea of having a Digimon partner, a lifelong friend, was really interesting to her now. Sirafal smiled and seemed rather excited. Oh wow! Look at that teamwork! Sherry nodded and then said, it's not only teamwork, Mom, it's like they can read each other's mind and intentions. This speaks of an enormous amount of battle experience and of working together. Sirafal smiled at Sherry and gave her a nod in agreement to her assessment. Yasaka hummed and then piped in, their Digimon are strong as well, I place them at a high-class level, not bad for rookie-level Digimon. Harry nodded, well, their Digimon have fought a lot of battles, it's only normal that they would be at a higher level than normal, even in their rookie form, plus they know how to work together. Yasaka nodded. Lily rubbed her chin and then spoke up, yeah, but that's not going to be enough. They might have taken Thalia, Percy, and Bianca by surprise, but... Bianca suddenly screamed and let out a massive amount of shadow energy. The pitch-black energy destroyed the fishes around her, setting her free, though she was far from amused. In fact, Bianca looked rather crossed. I hate slimy things. Suddenly, Bianca stabbed her scythe into the ground. She then slashed at the ground, which created a massive black scar in front of her. Suddenly some sort of shadow creatures began to crawl out of the black scar on the ground. The DG destined widened their eyes in surprise, as the shadow creatures suddenly screech at them and their Digimon. Bianca frowned, feeling icky from being cuddled by fishes, which is why she coldly stared at the DG destined and then pointed at them with her scythe. The shadow creatures screeched one more time and then rushed forward towards the DG destined on all four clawed limbs. The shadow creatures looked like bony dogs, with horns, which made for an intimidating sight. Nico slapped his forehead and shook his head. Damn it sis, we're not supposed to call on the shadow demons, she must be pissed. Harry raised an eyebrow at what Nico said. Shadow demons? When did you both learn to summon those things? They're very dangerous. Nico nodded in agreement with Harry's words. He then explained, Father taught us how to summon them, or rather he showed us how. I don't think he expected us to be able to pull it off. Though sis is better at it than I am, shadow demons listen to her more than me as well. Harry nodded and then said, we're going to have to talk about this later. Summoning those things could be a danger, especially because they feed on mana. Nico nodded, knowing that her dad had every right to be worried. After all, shadow demons are very dangerous creatures after all, and the fact that they grow stronger by feeding on mana made them a threat in a place like the Potter household and Neo Kyoto, which are places saturated in mana. Izzy suddenly called out to Tintaman, get ready. We can't let those things reach us. Tintaman flew forward right away, leave it to me, Izzy. Izzy grabbed hold of his smartphone, which vibrated and let out a purple glow. Tintaman suddenly exploded with purple digital energy, as he suddenly called out loudly, Tintaman Digivolve, to Kabuterimon. Kabuterimon flew forward and suddenly crossed both pairs of his arms. Let's see if you guys like this. Electroshocker. Kabuterimon spread his arms wide open and fired a massive orb of purple plasma at the shadow demons. However, Thalia appeared in a blur and intercepted Kabuterimon's electroshocker with her hand. To everyone's surprise, she even absorbed the attack as blue lighting began to dance around her body. The DG destined all looked up at Thalia as she stayed in the air floating while looking down at them. Nice surprise attacks and combos, but it's our turn now. Chapter 212. As soon as Thalia announced that it was their turn to attack, the DG destined widened their eyes when she suddenly waved her free arm forward and fired a massive blue lighting beam toward them. The DG destined flinched but knew they couldn't move away in time. Some of their Digimon partners, the ones closest to the DG destined, immediately rushed back to try and protect their human partners, but even they knew they wouldn't make it in time. Everyone braced themselves for impact and the pain they were about to feel. However, Carrie narrowed her eyes towards the blue lighting beam, her heart beating fast and strong, as time around her seemed to slow down. In reality, her perspective was seeing things at an accelerated pace. Suddenly, her vital bracelet began to beep and pulsate. Kari's eyes glowed pink as something inside of her told her to stand strong, to not fear, and to believe in herself, and Carrie listened, for she had learned from example, to always listen to her heart, a lesson she learned from Harry. So the DG destined of light raised her hand, the one that had her vital bracelet on, her pink digital energy surged forth from her hand and her crest materialized in front of her, blocking Thalia's blue lighting beam. Play, Digimon 2020 Ost, be the winners. The blue lighting beam crashed against the crest of light and was stopped with a big loud crackle. Carrie winced and flinched from the power behind Thalia's attack, but she raised her other hand and yelled as her pink digital energy exploded out of her body, increasing the power behind whatever she was doing. The rest of the DG destined stared in disbelief at what Carrie accomplished and was pulling off until Tai noticed his sister struggling and sweating. He knew Carrie wouldn't be able to hold back Thalia's attack for long. So the DG destined of courage tightened his hold around his smartphone and called out to his Digimon partner, Agumon. Carrie needs our help. Agumon heard Tai's words and nodded. He immediately got up from the ground and started running. Tai yelled as his orange digital energy exploded from his body. His smartphone glowed orange and then sent Tai's digital energy to Agumon. Agumon jumped up towards Thalia, as the orange digital energy hit him, and then loudly called out, Agumon. Digivolve to Greymon. But Agumon didn't stay in his champion form for long. Instead, he went to the next level. Below Greymon's feet, the crest of courage appeared and released orange digital energy, engulfing him in an egg of digital energy. The digital energy egg soon cracked and exploded. Greymon's voice loudly called out from within the energy, Greymon. Digivolve to Metal Greymon. Thalia clicked her tongue and let go of her blue lighting beam attack. She quickly raised her spear and stopped the massive metal claw coming her way, from the massive metal Greymon. There was a loud clang from the collision between Thalia's spear and metal Greymon's metal claw. Thalia was suddenly pushed away and sent crashing through the ground, breaking it from the force behind metal Greymon's claw attack. Metal Greymon roared and then stomped forward. Seraphal fist pumped in excitement, as she watched Agumon's ultimate form stomp forward towards where Thalia landed. Wow! That's what War Greymon looks like before digivolving? He's huge. Yasaka hummed and nodded. You know what? Now that you mentioned it, I don't think we've ever seen Harry's Digimon's weaker forms. They're always in their mega-level forms. Harry shrugged and then gave a smile to Seraphal and Yasaka. My Digimon just like to be in their mega form more than anything. In fact, Alphamon is the only one who likes taking on her Daruome's form, though that's only because she was in that form for the longest while we were in my journey around the multiverse. Eri suddenly piped in, plus is convenient to have them in their rookie forms, that way they can move around more easily. Yasaka and Seraphal nodded, understanding why Harry's Digimon stay in their mega forms, rather than go back to the rookie form. Meanwhile, Harry turned his head towards Carrie and stared at her as she let down her barrier. Their digital energy is manifesting better thanks to their vital bracelets, but to be able to manipulate it and give it form like that, it seems that all the experience they had with their digital energy is shining through now. Let's see if you guys can call forth more of this power of yours. Carrie sighed and let up her barrier. She looked at her hands and frowned when she saw them shake from and force behind Thalia's blue lighting beam. That was really powerful. I don't think they're playing around anymore. The DG destined immediately walked over to Carrie to check on her. Mako quickly grabbed Kari's hand and looked them over to check for injuries. Are you okay, Carrie? Carrie smiled at Mako and then gave her a nod. I'm fine, I just struggled to hold it back. It's a good thing Big Brother had Metal Greymon push Thalia away when he did. I don't think I would have been able to hold on for much longer. Tai nodded. He hadn't walked over to Carrie knowing he can trust everyone else to check on her, while he focuses on the battle, but he was listening to her though. However, Thalia had already recovered and went to attack Metal Greymon, who blocked her attacks with his Digizoid metal arm. Meanwhile, Izzy walked over to Carrie and decided to ask her a few questions. Carrie, what was that? How were you able to do that? Carrie frowned and then looked over to her vital bracelet. I'm not really sure, it was like I knew that I could stop that attack, I just needed to step forward and believe. It was weird too, my heart beat loudly and then I just raised my hand. Izzy frowned and then turned his head towards Kari's vital bracelet. I see, the bracelets seem to be a catalyst for this new ability. Could the vital bracelets be awakening the true powers of our digital energy, or is it something more simple? Could it be our bond with our Digimon that's manifesting these new powers? Digital World Core, Wiz's domain, Log Paradise. Wiz smiled as he watched the DG destined through the vital bracelets. He felt proud of Carrie, a new emotion that brought happiness and elation to him. Why? Because she has finally noticed the vital bracelet's purpose, dreams, hopes, and infinite potential. The vital bracelets just grants their user a new way to express that. Now it's up to all of you to figure out what you can do with this new ability, DG destined, but I believed in you, just as Harry does. Wiz chuckled, in amusement, a new way to express happiness. Boy, is he learning a lot lately, especially about all of these new emotions, but he quite liked growing, and watching over the DG destined is his favorite way to learn more about emotions. Tai heard Kari's explanation and Izzy's conjecture. He smiled and then called out to everyone, "It's simple really. Our bond and hearts are what's unlocking these new abilities. Just like Harry always told us, believe in yourself, your friends, and follow your heart." Tai's vital bracelet began to pulsate as his smartphone glowed as well. Suddenly Metal Greymon began to glow as orange digital energy exploded from him, sending Thalia back from the force. What now? Tai grinned as he grabbed hold of this new mysterious power, but unlike Carrie, who used it to create a barrier, he wanted to use it to strengthen Metal Greymon and see what would happen. He watched as Metal Greymon emerged from the orange digital energy. This time, he now had a second weapon in his other hand. Metal Greymon growled and then roared, "Shift DG Evolution! Metal Greymon, Alterose Mode!" Harry widened his eyes as he stared at Metal Greymon's new form. In complete and utter surprise, Seraphal was cheering and had sparkles coming out of her eyes. "Ah! He looks so awesome! Is that a railgun?" Yasaka raised an eyebrow and then turned her gaze towards Harry, only to see him have a surprised look on his face. She couldn't help but giggle at the rare sight. "By your expression, it seems that you didn't know that could happen." Harry sighed and then chuckled in amusement. "To think that as old as I am, I can still be surprised. But yes, I had no idea Metal Greymon had an alternate form like this. Shift DG Evolution, hey! Sounds fun." Harry widely smiled and quickly took out her smartphone. She then immediately scanned Metal Greymon's new form to get his information. Metal Greymon Alterose Mode is an android Digimon. Metal Greymon, which acquired mighty power by mechanizing its upper body, has been updated with further mechanization to its right arm. With the accumulation of fierce battles that it has lived through, it transformed its right arm into a huge energy cannon called ALT Rouse so that it can fight against tough enemies that draw near. It exhibits its full combat ability at both close and long range, and has been remodeled to defeat any tough enemy it encounters. Eri was awed at the information she received and then turned her attention back to the battle, hoping to see more cool stuff happening. The DG destined awed at Metal Greymon's new form. Izzy was all over the moon and had already scanned this new form with his smartphone. Prodigious! Metal Greymon's stats and power have gone through the roof. Not only that, his fighting capability has been increased as well. The DG destined looked amazed and shocked, but most of all, they were excited at seeing a new form from one of the Digimon, a feeling they didn't know they had missed. A new flame had been rekindled in the DG destined's hearts, along with a new sense of awe and discovery. Percy looked up in awe and then chuckled. "Well, they're certainly full of surprises." Bianca walked over to Percy and nodded. "Well, they are our dad's friends, they were bound to give us a surprise or two. Still, they seem to have forgotten about us, hey?" Percy nodded, but smiled. "Yup, but I don't blame them, that new DG evolution looked cool, I'm honestly a little jealous." Bianca giggled and nodded. "Me too. Do you think Dad would let us get a Digimon and join the guild? The battle guilds are fun, but this one seems a bit more special, you know." Percy nodded in agreement. There was just something amazing about the bond between the DG destined and their Digimon partners. It was something clearly special, and it can be seen with this new DG evolution that the DG destined have discovered. "I'm sure Dad would let us, in fact, I think I might just join myself." Bianca nodded and had an excited smile on her face. She then twirled her scythe and then pointed it towards the DG destined. The shadow demons, who had paused to watch the clash between Kari's barrier and Thalia's blue lighting beam, suddenly screeched and then took off running towards the DG destined again. Davis noticed the shadow demons and grinned. He then stepped towards them, while calling out to his friends and fellow second generation of the DG destined, "Guys, we're dealing with these ones." Yoli, Cody and Ken walked forward and stepped to Davis' side. The DG destined of courage and friendship looked back towards the first generation of the DG destined and gave them all a smile. "Leave these guys to us. You guys take care of Percy, Bianca and Thalia, while we do that. If anyone can make sense of this new power of ours is you guys. But I do expect you to teach us how to do all that cool stuff when this is over." With that said, Davis turned around and grabbed his smartphone tightly in his hand. Suddenly, his blue and orange digital energy exploded from his body, as his digig of friendship appeared on the screen of his smartphone. Let's do this, Veman. Veman jumped from where he had been watching everything happening and landed in front of Davis. I'm ready, partner. Davis smiled at Veman. Suddenly, the digig of friendship exploded into digital energy and engulfed Veman, forming a lighting-made egg around the rookie Digimon. Veman's voice then called out from the inside of the digital energy soon after, Veman. Armor Digivolve 2. Raid Ramon. The Storm of Friendship. Play, Digimon Adventure 2 Ost, Run Around. Raid Ramon burst out of the digital energy and rushed forward at high speed. He growled and then roared at the shadow demons. Let's see your monsters take this. Blue Thunder. A powerful blue electroshock fired towards the shadow demons from Raid Ramon's 3 protuberances on his back. The shadow demons collided against the incoming attack and screeched in agony, until they exploded into black smoke. Yulia grinned and lifted her smartphone. Come on, Hawkman. We can't have Davis and Veman having all the fun. Hawkman nodded and took off flying toward the shadow demons. Of course not. Let's make up for being absent during the infected Digimon problem. Yulia nodded as her body exploded in red and green digital energy. As the digig of love appeared on her smartphone's screen, suddenly, the digig of love exploded into digital energy and engulfed Hawkman, forming an red energy egg around the rookie Digimon. Hawkman then loudly called out from inside the red energy egg, Hawkman. Armor Digivolve 2. Halseyman. The Wings of Love. Halseyman flew out of the red energy egg and then began to spin at high speed in midair. Take this. Tempest Wing. Halseyman became a tornado of sharp wind that flew straight into the shadow demon, slicing them into pieces, while they screamed and screeched in pain. Cody smiled and nodded. It's been a while since we all fought together like this, especially because we were in a coma for a long time. Time to make up for that, right, Armadilloman? Armadilloman suddenly popped out of the ground beside Cody and raised his paw in agreement. That's right, buddy. It's our time to shine. Cody nodded and got his smartphone ready. His body then exploded in his grey and purple digital energy. On his screen the digig of knowledge appeared as he then said, then let's show everyone what we can do. Armadilloman grinned and then jumped out of his hole. As the digig of knowledge exploded and engulfed Armadilloman in a purple energy egg, Armadilloman's voice then called out from within the energy egg, Armadilloman. Armor Digivolve 2. Digimon. The Drill of Knowledge. Digimon stomped out of the purple energy egg and then crossed his arms together. Ha ha ha. It's good to be back in this form. Now let's take care of the vermin. Gold Rush. A multitude of rockets fired from Digimon's drills and flew straight into the still rushing shadow demons. A series of explosions then rocked the area, while the shadow demons screeched as they died vaporized by Digimon's attack. Both Seraphal and Eri were awed at the new flashy form of Digivolution, something that made Harry smile at them in amusement. It didn't take long for both of them to let their opinion be known. Eri turned her head towards her father and excitedly asked, Daddy. What was that? It looked so cool. Seraphal nodded and then also added in her opinion, it was so flashy and the way they called out their titles was so cool. The Wings of Love. The Storm of Friendship. Woo. I'm hyped. Harry chuckled, glad to see that both of them seemed to have enjoyed the second generation of the Digidestined's form of Digivolution. Yasaka tilted her head and then also spoke her opinion. That was very interesting, that certainly felt and seemed different from regular Digivolution. Harry nodded and then began to explain, with a smile on his face, Armor Digivolution is an ancient form of Digivolution which only a handful of Digimon are capable of. To gain this form, the Digimon needs to absorb the energy from one of those special Digi eggs the second generation of the Digidestined have. If a Digimon has multiple Digi eggs, its Digivolved forms become progressively more powerful as well. An Armor Digimon's power is equal to an ultimate level Digimon. Of course, some can even become as powerful as a mega-level Digimon. The second generation of the Digidestined's Digimon are far more powerful than that though. Both Seraphal and Eri seemed even more awed upon hearing the explanation of what Armor Digivolution is. It just sounded so mysterious and mystical to them. Ken watched his friends use their Digi eggs and fight back against the shadow demons. He often felt a bit left out when it came to his friends' abilities to Armor Digivolve their Digimon. After all, he didn't have a Digig, but then he remembered something Harry told him a long time ago. The Dragon God once told him, that even if he didn't have a Digig, was stopping him from asking to borrow one from the others? At the time, Ken didn't feel like he deserved to use something like a Digig, not after all the horrible things he's done. But now? After he and his friends had been defeated and almost killed, Ken decided to take a step forward. He took a decision right there and then, to not let his past actions no longer hold him down and to seek strength. Strength to protect the friends he has now, his family, and Worman. So Ken smiled and then called out to Davis, "Davis." Davis turned his head towards Ken and saw him smiling at him. He didn't know why, but that smile told him that his friend has come to a big decision. Ken then wasted no time asking Davis a favor now that he had his attention. "Let me borrow your Dijig of Courage." Yuli, Cody, and Davis' eyes widen in surprise. Upon hearing Ken's request, this was something that he has never asked for before and not something anyone ever thought of doing either. It certainly awakened a sense of curiosity in the second generation of the DG Destined. But Davis shook his surprise off and then grinned at Ken. "Sure buddy. I can't wait to see what happens." Davis raised his smartphone and the Dijig of Courage materialized above it. Davis grabbed it and then threw it towards Ken. The DG Destined of Kindness caught it with ease and then looked down at it for a few seconds, before speaking up, "Please, help me fight alongside my friends." The Dijig of Courage flared up with digital energy, making Ken smile. He then tightened his hold on his smartphone and called out to his Digimon partner, "Worman. Are you ready?" Worman wobbled his way to Ken and stood at his side. He nodded and smiled as he loudly answered his human partner's question, "Of course Ken, let's do this." Ken nodded as his body exploded in black and violet digital energy. As the Dijig of Courage began to glow with an orange light suddenly, the Dijig of Courage exploded into digital energy and engulfed Worman, forming a red energy egg around the rookie Digimon. Within the energy egg, Worman loudly called out, "Worman. Armor Digivolve to Flame Wizardman. The Arcane Flames of Courage." Everyone watched as Worman's new armor Digivolution walked out of the red energy egg and took out his two matchstick staffs. He then grinned as he pointed them at the shadow demons. "Feel the heat. Fire cloud." A massive firestorm took form right in the middle of the shadow demons, incinerating them in seconds. Davis laughed and seemed very happy at Ken's accomplishment. "Ah yet. Let's go." Yuli and Cody smiled and shared in their leader's enthusiasm, while Ken stared at Flame Wizardman with an odd smile on his face. Flame Wizardman turned his head to the side and gave Ken a smile and a thumbs up, causing the DG Destined of Kindness to chuckle and nod in excitement. Bianca's sweat dropped as she watched the second generation of the DG Destined begin to really fight off her shadow demons with ease. Explosions, winds blast, earthquake, and lightning storms began to go all over the place. "Why do I feel like I'm fighting Ari or Morgan?" Percy chuckled and nodded in agreement. The amount of chaos and destruction happening right now was about the same as you'd expect from both Ari and Morgan, especially because of their love of all things that go bang. But their attention was taken off the second generation of the DG Destined when then heard a massive explosion and then watched as Thalia was sent flying and crashing in front of them. Thalia groaned a bit and quickly got up. She then turned her head towards his sister and brother to glare at them. "Hey! Are you guys done having a conversation? Because I'm fighting a massive dinosaur with a goddamn railgun in one arm and a massive metal claw on the other, by myself." Percy nervously laughed and had to agree with Thalia. They really shouldn't have been talking like this in the middle of a battle. Bianca just shrugged and grinned at Thalia though. "You're doing fine." Thalia narrowed her eyes at Bianca and then huffed in annoyance. "I'm going to tell Mom Sirafal that you want to appear in her show if you don't start fighting." Bianca flinched in shock at Thalia's threat, while Percy hissed and winced. Bianca soon recovered and pointed a finger at Thalia. "That's not cool. You wouldn't do that to me, would you?" Percy nodded in agreement. "Yeah Thalia, that's the nuclear option you're unleashing." But Thalia just scoffed and got ready to go back to the battle, then get to fighting. They're getting stronger and are instinctively calling on their powers. Suddenly, they heard Metal Greymon's voice yell out an attack, Positron Blaster. The three demigods' eyes widened when Metal Greymon aimed at them and then fired a subliminal bombardment at them. Bianca deadpanned and sighed, "This is going to hurt." A massive boom shook the area as a dome of plasma and flames grew out from where the demigods were standing. Ty narrowed his eyes as even though he saw Metal Greymon's attack hit, something in him told him that this wasn't over yet. So he quickly turned his head to the side and issued orders to his friends, "Quickly! Have everyone digivolve now, that they're distracted." The DG Destined wasted no time in doing as Ty requested, knowing well enough to trust his instincts when it came to battles, so everyone quickly digivolved their Digimon partners to their ultimate levels. Angewoman, Magna Angemon, Lilimon, Zudaman, Megacabuterimon, Guridaman, Mikrakman, and Wargaruruman appeared in a burst of digital energy and immediately took their places alongside Metal Greymon. Only for Metal Greymon to have to quickly raise his metal claw to block Thalia's spear that came out flying out of the explosion's dome, dispersing it. Metal Greymon growled as he was pushed back, skidding from the force behind the thrown spear. The DG Destined then saw as Thalia, Percy, and Bianca stood in the middle of the crater created by the explosion caused by Metal Greymon's positron blaster, physically fine, though their clothes looked a bit scuffed and burned. However, their clothes soon began to repair themselves. Thalia raised her hand and her spear flew back towards her. She deftly caught in her hand and then aimed it at the DG Destined. I actually felt that one, but it's going to take more than that to take us down. Percy nodded and raised his sword and shield at the ready, while Bianca waved her scythe wide and then held it above her shoulders. The DG Destined nervously began to sweat. Metal Greymon's attack was powerful, but it seems like it hardly did anything to Thalia, Percy, and Bianca, but they still felt it, which meant that they can damage them. They just had to keep trying and hit them hard. With that mind, the DG Destined smiled, and then got ready. Tai stomped forward and then yelled out to his Digimon partner, "Go! Metal Greymon!" Metal Greymon roared and then took off flying towards the demigods with his wings. He raised his ALT Rouse energy cannon and called out his attack, Alter Blade. A massive positron energy blade emerged from Metal Greymon's energy cannon as he rushed forward in a thrusting motion. Percy and Bianca jumped away, but Thalia twirled her spear and then slammed its shaft into the altar blade's side. A loud crackle and clang echoed through the area as Metal Greymon grunted and was pushed by the side by Thalia's counter, but before she could capitalize on Metal Greymon's open side, she was forced to jump back, when Wargaruruman jumped toward her and tried to spin kick her. Thalia narrowed her eyes towards Wargaruruman and began to dodge his kicks and claw attacks. Matt watched this happening and glared. Wargaruruman was too slow to actually hit Thalia. He quickly looked around and watched as the rest of the DG Destined were fighting and holding back. Percy and Bianca, Sora, Izzy, and Mimi were keeping an eye on Guritamon, Megacabuterimon, and Lilymon as they fought against Percy, who was not only fast, but his sword technique and water kinesis were more than enough to keep the three ultimate level Digimon busy and at bay. Carrie, Joe, TK, and Mako were keeping an eye on Angewoman, Zudaman, Magna Angeman, and Mikrakman as they fought against Bianca, whose skill with the scythe and her Umbra kinesis was giving a hard time to the ultimate level Digimon. They were being overwhelmed quickly. Metal Greymon's new form was a big help and was good at keeping Thalia on her toes, but now that she knew what Metal Greymon is capable of, she was more cautious, so someone needs to give Metal Greymon an opening. But Wargaruruman is too slow, which began to frustrate Matt. However, and suddenly, Tai called out to him, "Matt, calm down, we can do this, just believe in Wargaruruman and listen to your heart." "Listen to my heart." Matt stared into Tai's eyes in silence for a few seconds. Tai then nodded to him and smiled. It was then that Matt felt his heartbeat and then another one. He didn't recognize the other heartbeat at first, but then it clicked. It was Wargaruruman's heartbeat. Matt turned to look at where Wargaruruman was and watched him try hard to hit Thalia with all his might, but she was quickly and deftly dodging all his attacks with ease. But Wargaruruman never gave up. He just kept going while Metal Greymon tried to get a clear shot. Matt tightened his grip on his smartphone and gritted his teeth. "I have to help Wargaruruman, Metal Greymon, and Tai. I have to do something." Suddenly, Matt's vital bracelet began to beep and pulsate as his digital energy burst out and his smartphone exploded with a blue light. Then Wargaruruman was engulfed in an egg of blue digital energy. Thalia covered her eyes to protect them from the light. "What the?" Again. Play Digimon 2020 OST, Extreme Fight. Wargaruruman suddenly roared from within the digital energy egg. Wargaruruman Shift Digivolution. Wargaruruman Sagittarius Mode. Wargaruruman rushed out the blue digital energy egg in a flash of blue and appeared in front of Thalia, who widened her eyes in shock and a little bit of annoyance. This isn't fair." Wargaruruman Sagittarius Mode grinned at her and then gave her a shrug. He then unleashed his attack on Thalia, Kaiser Nail. Wargaruruman moved at light speed, catching Thalia by surprise and received a series of slashes. Thalia screamed in pain and was then sent flying back and crashing against multiple trees, while Wargaruruman made a martial arts stance and grinned, feeling proud of his new speed. Chapter 213. After being slashed at the speed of light and sent flying through a bunch of trees, Thalia lay there on the ground while staring at the sky and watching the clouds pass by. She looked mighty perplexed and a bit frustrated with how the spar was going. "Well, this is what I get for challenging Digimon tamers to a fight. I should have known this was going to get out of control right away. Still, this is kinda unfair. How many new transformations do they have? It's like fighting multiple pops at the same time. This is getting ridicule." Thalia was suddenly cut off mid-sentence by Metal Greymon's voice, who called out an attack while she was still down in the ground and ranting, "Giga Destroyer! Two big organic missiles with sharp teeth on their front suddenly came flying towards Thalia, who could only watch on as this happened with her eyes wide open in shock. Oh motherfuck! Boom! A massive explosion shook the area, as the spot where Thalia was laying on the ground, was suddenly devastated by a massive explosion that created a giant dome of destruction. Percy winced when he felt the explosion and looked over towards where Thalia was. Oh shit! Was that a nuke? Bianca sighed and shook her head, knowing that this was just going to make things escalate even more. After all, Thalia isn't one to take things like this laying down. Well, she's going to be pissed now. Suddenly, Bianca was forced to deflect an attack from Magna Angeman's blade. She tried to counterattack the moment the ultimate Holy Angel Digimon lost his balance. However, Angewoman immediately tried to shoot Bianca with a celestial arrow. Bianca noticed the arrow right away and frowned as she saw the holy light arrow coming her way. She jumped back to avoid it, while Magna Angeman recovered his balance and moved away from Bianca, just in case she still wanted to attack him. Crackman rushed forward and unleashed a trio of spinning kicks at Bianca, but she quickly ducked down and moved to the side to dodge the kicks and began to twirl her scythe around her body. Crackman, not wanting to get cut open by Bianca's very scary-looking scythe, immediately jumped away. She then rolled to the side to get away from Bianca. Zudaman then waved his arm down towards Bianca, and his hammer engulfed in lightning crashed against Bianca's scythe, unleashing sparks all over the place. Both clashed their weapons multiple times at high speed, causing multiple shockwaves to go off all around them. Meanwhile, Percy blocked a flower cannon from Lilimon with his shield. He then spun around on his toes and swung his sword down hard, releasing an energy wave from his blade towards Megacobuterimon, who was flying towards him with his horn glowing red and ready to attack Percy. Percy's energy wave crashed against Megacobuterimon's hornbuster, causing a massive explosion to go off, but Percy didn't have much time to do anything else, as he was forced to block a wing blade from Guridaman with his shield. Percy grunted and he was suddenly pushed back from the force behind Guridaman's attack. However, he soon stopped himself by stabbing his sword into the ground. He looked up towards the three ultimate level Digimon he was facing off against and stared at them for a couple of seconds. He soon moved his gaze towards Bianca, who was forced back by Zudaman's last swing of his hammer. She skidded along the ground for a few moments before she stopped and shared a look with Percy. Both had a quick silent conversation with each other, by just staring into each other's eyes, both knowing that things were getting hard on them, which made them realize that they would have to step it up a notch before they were taken down by the DG Destined. In all honesty, they weren't expecting to need to really go all out in this spar. In hindsight, they should have known better than to underestimate friends of their father Harry, given how crazy powerful he is. It was common sense that any friend of his wouldn't be anything remotely close to normal or weak. Percy grinned at Bianca in amusement, feeling that this situation was funny. Bianca giggled and shook her head, thinking the same thing Percy is. This is just only getting started and they were ready to take this spar to the next level. Harry noticed the looks shared between Bianca and Percy. He knew that his demigod children had been training hard all this time, both to catch up to everyone and to protect their home. Regularly going inside the natural dungeon or training with their blood fathers was a common thing for them nowadays. Without any rules or laws preventing Hades and Poseidon from being around their children, they have been able to teach them how to really harness their powers as demigods. Though Thalia was a bit different, she wasn't about to go ask Zeus for advice or for lessons. Instead, she went around asking the many other deities in Neo-Kyoto for advice and lessons on how to use her powers. Ereshkigal, Apphis, Amaterasu, Hestia, and even Rhea taught Thalia how to harness the full power of her divine blood, while Harry taught her techniques, spells, and how to create her own techniques and powers. However, Percy, Bianca, and Thalia weren't just demigods, they were also dragonoids, and as such, they had far more powers and abilities than before, something they had spent a lot of time practicing with. They were, after all, on the Dragon King level and fast approaching the Heavenly Dragon level. It was only a matter of time before they would all break through and rank up, but this also means that the DG Destined have not seen anything from them yet, and going by the looks Percy and Bianca shared with each other, things were about to get difficult for the DG Destined and their Digimon partners once again. Still, this little spar was full of surprises. Harry moved his gaze over to Metal Greymon and Wargaruruman. These two new forms of theirs were completely new to him. In fact, he had no idea such forms existed. Those new forms, they seemed to be a perfected form of their ultimate forms. It's like both were able to make up for what they were lacking. They're both ultimate level Digimon, but their power is a bit beyond a mega level Digimon now. In fact, a Pokélimon would have been destroyed in seconds by these two now. Harry then watched as Eri scanned Wargaruruman's new form with her smartphone, wanting to know more about this new form of Wargaruruman. Wargaruruman Sagittarius mode is a Beastman Digimon. It is a form that acquired Sagittarius mobility equipment that makes up for the agility it lost when it digivolved from Garuruman. It has gained firepower, in addition to high-speed movement and the ability to fly thanks to the Sagittarius booster function. Its loyal personality hasn't changed, and it has developed into a more reliable battlefield professional that rescues its master in any predicament. It lures its target into battle situations that it specializes in. Harry raised an eyebrow at the information given by the Aries smartphone. Sagittarius and Alteros both make up for the weakness of both Metal Greymon and Wargaruruman's power and fighting style. It not only made them more powerful, but their fighting capabilities were heightened to a high degree as well. Harry grinned and then raised his arm to take a look at his vital bracelet, wondering if he could also obtain those new forms of Metal Greymon and Wargaruruman. Perhaps he should see about getting a new Aguman and Gabuman, to train from the start again and gain these two new form of theirs. The explosion caused by Metal Greymon's Giga Destroyer was suddenly pushed apart by a massive blue thunderbolt that shot up from the ground into the sky. The big crackle, flash, and boom from the thunderbolt forced Wargaruruman and Metal Greymon to cover their eyes with their arms. Ty and Matt grunted and looked away from the massive thunderbolt to protect their eyesight from the bright light caused by the lightning bolt. Soon enough, the attack subsided and both humans and their Digimon partners looked over towards where the explosion was blown apart, only to see Thalia suddenly and slowly float up from the crater left by the aftermath of Metal Greymon's Giga Destroyer. Though the DG Destined and their Digimon immediately noticed something different about Thalia, the demigod was utterly engulfed in blue electricity as lightning bolts lashed out around her. Her blue hair was now glowing along with her blue eyes. She soon stopped high above the DG Destined and their Digimon as black clouds began to gather and cover the sky above Thalia. Thunder and lightning began to boom, crackle, and drop to the ground from the sky. Thalia looked down and smiled at Ty and Matt. "You got me good, twice in fact. I've known how Metal Greymon and Wargaruruman fight. Pops let me battle them before. I didn't beat them of course, but still, they never caught me so off guard before. A Metal Greymon who can fight in close range, while still being the absolute tank, is a long-range attacker, and a Wargaruruman whose speed and attack strength surpass any of its previous DG evolutions. It's mighty impressive, not going to lie. I'm very impressed, so I'm going to hit you guys harder now. This is my Bleephotismos mode, that's Greek for blue lighting mode by the way." Ty, Matt, Wargaruruman, and Metal Greymon were awed in shock as Thalia raised her spear above her head and blue lighting shot up into the sky, overcharging the clouds and causing a thunderstorm to fall upon the battleground. Percy smiled and then nodded to himself as he watched Thalia show off a bit. "Well, I can't very well be left behind, hey." Out of nowhere, water droplets began to materialize around Percy. As his hair and eyes began to glow in a sea green hue, the water droplets then began to swirl around him until they became raging rapids. Percy closed his eyes as the water began to spread all around him, causing the Digimon and the DG Destined fighting him to jump back and away from him. He soon opened his eyes and raised his sword above his head. A torrent of water rose from the ground underneath him and began to form a massive, fast-moving water cyclone that covered him completely. He smiled within the crystal clear water and then said, "This is my Rafiktra Orgy or Whirlpool Rage form." Bianca deadpanned as she heard both Percy and Thalia announce their elemental transformation and then sighed, "All right. I have a transformation too, but I haven't named it. I rather not sound edgy like Thalia or a chunny like Percy, thank you very much." Percy's eyebrow twitched in annoyance. He really thought his Whirlpool Rage form was pretty cool, damn it. Meanwhile, Thalia had heard what Bianca had said about her new form, thanks to her enhanced hearing, and decided right then and there to drag her to hell with her, when their mom Sirafal came for her to do her show. Unaware of the horrible fate that would befall her later, Bianca was suddenly engulfed by shadows and pitch-black darkness, until that very same elemental energy wrapped around her and created a hooded robe around her body. Bianca grinned and then twirled her scythe around, before pointing it at the DG Destined. "Both my fathers helped me master this form. In this form I am Shadow and Death incarnate." The DG Destined watched the three demigods take on enhanced forms, each one engulfed and wrapped around their respective elements in a bit of their divinity. It was something out of this world. It was as if they were fighting against full-fledged gods instead of demigods. Yasaka proudly smiled as she watched her son and daughters gather and let their elements and divinity flow in sync. "Looks like sending them to ask for advice from Naruto was a good idea. That elemental shroud of theirs is amazing." Sirafal nodded and widely smiled. "Oh, I'm going to have Thalia transform in my show. It's going to be epic and super dramatic." Harry chuckled, but then smiled at his children. "They have been working hard to master this. When they told me how they wanted to manifest their elements and divinity, I immediately knew that Naruto would be the best person to help them with their new transformation. His six-path Sage Chakra mode works very similarly to this, though because of Kurama, his chakra is neutral when in that form. I think wind would have manifested in him otherwise. He is kinda like a demigod after all. Eri turned her head towards her father and smiled. Ah. So because big brother and big sister's elements are so connected to them, their shroud took in characteristics of said elements. Harry smiled at Eri and gave her a nod. That's right, in those forms, Percy, Thalia, and Bianca are their elements personified, they are forces of nature now. Eri excitedly went back to watching the spar, while Harry turned his gaze toward the DG Destined and stared as they got ready to fight. Let's see how you guys respond to this now. Suddenly, Thalia disappeared in a flash of lightning, and a split second later, Metal Greymon was sent flying back while being engulfed in electricity. Tai watched as Metal Greymon crashed against some tree while screaming in pain from being electrocuted. Metal Greymon. Matt widened his eyes at what happened. It was so fast, that he couldn't perceive any of Thalia's movements. Wargaruruman immediately flashed towards Thalia to distract her. She of course, disappeared in a flash of lightning again and began to clash against Wargaruruman at the speed of light all around the battlefield. Matt narrowed his eyes as booms and cracks began to resound everywhere. Despite everything shaking and trembling from the clashes between Wargaruruman and Thalia, Matt stood strong and tall, but, despite Wargaruruman being able to clash against Thalia, he was taking too many blows. Somehow Matt felt, every hit and blow Wargaruruman received, he felt it, not to the same extent, or to the point of feeling pain, but he knew that Wargaruruman was getting pummeled, so he needed to do something soon, otherwise, Wargaruruman would be eventually defeated. Meanwhile, Tai took off running towards where Metal Greymon had landed. To check on him, he quickly found him, lying on his back, while wincing in pain. Sparks of blue lighting lashed out from his body as he grunted in pain. Tai immediately ran towards him, but Metal Greymon shook his head and quickly yelled, "Stop!" Tai stopped and stared at Metal Greymon in surprise, but Metal Greymon gave him a warm smile. "There's still electricity flying everywhere, Tai." Tai nodded, understanding that Metal Greymon didn't want him to get shocked and get hurt. "Are you okay? That looks like a nasty hit." Metal Greymon chuckled and then began to try to get up. "Everything hurts. In fact, my tail is hurting. But I'm excited, Tai." Tai looked up at his partner and grinned at him, finding his excitement funny. "We're getting our butts kicked out here, man." Metal Greymon grinned at his human partner. "We are, but I love being able to fight with you like this again. It's fun, no world-ending problems. No bad guys, just us against our foes and trying to prove our strength. Just like the good old days. Play Digimon, Butterfly, final version." Tai's eyes widened as he stared into Metal Greymon's eyes. In his mind, flashbacks of his adventures with his Digimon partner began to appear. When he first met Koraman, when he digivolved into a human for the first time to save and protect him. Soon after, he digivolved again into Greymon, to fight against Shellman, when he learned the true nature of courage in being stalwart and moving forward even when scared, and Greymon digivolved into Metal Greymon to battle Itman. Finally, he realized the secret to unlocking his best friend and Digimon partner's Mega Digivolution. The first time he saw War Greymon fight, was something he would never forget, even when Harry was there to help and guide them. There was this sense of awe and accomplishment whenever a human unlocked a new Digivolution. It made him proud to witness his Digimon partner's growth. It all made him learn so many life lessons and helped him grow as a person. With how busy his life has gotten, he had to admit that he had forgotten this feeling, something that made him sad to realize. He had missed fighting alongside his Digimon, the adventures and the amazing things one could witness when Digimon are involved. So when Metal Greymon said that he was enjoying himself with this spar, Tai couldn't help but cheerfully smile at him and give him a nod. "You know what, buddy? I miss this a lot, but you're right, this is fun. We have to do this more often." Metal Greymon stared into Tai's eyes. In those eyes full of care and love, he saw a small young Tai, then an older and more experienced Tai helping the second generation of the DG Destined, and then, the Tai of now, a far calmer and mature Tai. But still, the very same brave child he met so long ago. "Taiki, you've gotten so big." Tai chuckled and then tightened his fist. "Of course I did, buddy, I've grown, but let's push that aside and show Thalia our real power." Metal Greymon nodded and leaned his head forward. Tai jumped onto Metal Greymon's head right away and crouched down on it. Metal Greymon stood up and looked up towards where he could see Wargaruruman and Thalia clashing in mid-air. Tai narrowed his eyes and then grinned. "I have an idea, Metal Greymon. I got it from watching Carrie make that barrier. When I give you the signal, I want you to hit Thalia with everything you have. Metal Greymon grinned just like Tai did and nodded. He immediately began to charge energy into his ALTE Rouse cannon, while also preparing his bio-missiles. Tai closed his eyes and pointed an open hand towards where Thalia and Wargaruman were clashing. Orange digital energy exploded from his body, as he began to think of the most powerful attack he had seen Wargreymon use. Meanwhile, Percy rose into the air as an orb of water formed around him. Guridaman, Lilimon, and Megacobuterimon immediately fired their attacks at Percy, hoping to disperse the water and stop Percy from whatever he was planning to do, but the demigod suddenly spread his arms wide open and made the water orb around him spread out, stopping the attacks coming his way, while forcing the Digimon to jump back and instead protect Sora, Izzy, and Mimi. The three humans screamed as they and their Digimon were pushed back, until they crashed against some trees and the ground. From the very big and powerful tsunami-like attack that hit them, Percy soon made the water orb pull back and then pointed a hand towards the Digimon. The water orb split apart into a multitude of water drills. With a flex of his hand, Percy fired the water drills at the Digimon. Megacobuterimon immediately deflected some of them away with his horn, but he was quickly overpowered and sent crashing against the ground. Lilimon took off flying and began to shoot apart as many water drills as she could before she was also shot down and sent to the ground screaming in pain. Guridaman ignited her claws and feet and began to punch and kick the remaining water drills away. She was successful in keeping them away from Sora, Izzy, and Mimi, but she was eventually overtaken and blasted away. Sora immediately ran towards Guridaman to check on her, while Izzy went to Megacobuterimon and Mimi to Lilimon. Sora reached Guridaman and hugged her face. Hey! Are you okay? Guridaman coughed and then groaned. Oh, my feathers hurt. Sora giggled. You silly Monday. Mimi got to Lilimon and then helped her sit up. Lilimon weakly smiled at Mimi and then shook her head. I'm wet. I don't like being wet, it makes my hair a mess. Mimi smiled at Lilimon and nodded. You're still pretty, Lilimon. Lilimon grinned and nodded. Good. Izzy arrived at Megacobuterimon. Are you okay, Megacobuterimon? Speak to me. Megacobuterimon sat up and shook his head. Whoa, everything is spinning. Why are there three of you, Izzy? Izzy laughed and shook his head. Come on, we're not out of the fight yet. Right. Megacobuterimon nodded and stood up. That's right. All three of you are correct, this fight isn't over yet. Izzy nodded and stood up. He then tightened his hold on his smartphone and smiled. All right, then it's time we take up a notch. I've been wanting to try this for a while, ever since I saw Joe and Mimi pull it off. Now, let's go, Megacobuterimon. Izzy's body suddenly exploded with purple digital energy as his crest of knowledge manifested behind him. Megacobuterimon growled as his body became purple digital energy and merged with Izzy's for a few moments, until it shot upwards into the sky, leaving Izzy with his smartphone glowing purple and pulsating with energy. The purple digital energy soon stopped high above Izzy and coalesced into a purple orb of digital energy, and from within the orb, Megacobuterimon's voice echoed outwards. Megacobuterimon. Digivolve to Hercules Cobuterimon. Izzy smiled as he stared at his Digimon partner's massive golden mega-level form. Prodigious. The massive form of Hercules Cobuterimon immediately emerged from the purple orb of digital energy and headed straight towards Percy, who widened his eyes in surprise. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. Hercules Cobuterimon laughed and then loudly said, sorry, this is no joke, and neither is this. Mega Electro Shocker. A massive blast of yellow, red, and purple lighting shot out of Hercules Cobuterimon's horn and headed straight towards Percy, who immediately raised a hand. The water around him immediately shot towards him and began to make a massive water avatar of his image. This one was however holding a trident. The massive water avatar swung his trident towards Hercules Cobuterimon's Mega Electro Shocker. Both attacks clashed against each other until they cancelled each other out, sending a massive shockwave all over the area. Percy grunted and gritted his teeth in pain. To his surprise, he actually felt that, which made him feel a little worried now. Shit. That attack was no joke. He was about to say something else, but he had no chance. Sora's body suddenly exploded with red digital energy as her crest of love manifested behind her. Guridaman stood up and then smiled as her body became red digital energy and merged with Sora's for a few moments until it shot upwards into the sky, leaving Sora with her smartphone glowing red and pulsating with energy. We're not done either. It's our turn to show everyone what we're made of. The red digital energy soon stopped high above Sora and coalesced into a red orb of digital energy, and from within the orb, Guridaman's voice echoed outwards. Guridaman. Digivolve to Howman. The massive mega-level form of Howman exploded out of the red orb of digital energy and screeched loudly into the sky. Sora stared at her Digimon partner's mega form in complete awe. Beautiful. Howman smiled as she heard Sora compliment her. She then charged her body with her holy power and then flapped her four wings towards Percy, who was now cursing out loud from having to face a second mega-level Digimon. Let's see that water of yours resist this. Starlight explosion. Percy's eyes widened in shock and worry as he watched a rain of golden grains head his way. He immediately covered his body with his shield, while his massive water avatar crossed his arms in an effort to protect Percy. The golden grains crashed against Percy and engulfed him in a bombardment of holy fire explosions. As the attack shook the area and seeing an opening, Mimi smiled and then nodded to Lilimon, who nodded back and got up. Mimi's body suddenly exploded with green digital energy as her crest of sincerity manifested behind her. Lilimon smiled and winked as her body became green digital energy and merged with Mimi for a few moments, until it shot upwards into the sky, leaving Mimi with her smartphone glowing green and pulsating with energy. The green digital energy soon stopped high above Mimi and coalesced into a green orb of digital energy, and from within the orb, Lilimon's voice echoed outwards, Lilimon. Digivolve to Rosamund. Percy flew out from the explosion singed and quite hurt, but Rosamund caught him in midair with her torn whip. She then pulled him back towards her. Percy screamed in surprise as he was violently pulled to Rosamund, who caught him with her foot, and then stomped him into the ground, in front of her. Percy grunted in pain as his back impacted the ground, while Rosamund leaned forward and smiled at him, while he lay on the ground with her foot on his chest. Well, big boy, not so tough now, are you? Percy looked up and blushed a bit. Is it wrong that I'm a little turned on right now? Mimi giggled and shook her head, while Rosamund gave Percy a soft smile. A little bit, but I don't mind. Percy didn't get to respond or say anything next before Rosamund raised a hand and then called out her next attack, Forbidden Temptation. A shower of innumerable rose petals crashed on top of Percy, while Rosamund jumped back and then landed beside Mimi, with one of her hands on her hip. She then grinned towards Mimi and said, Boys. Mimi giggled and nodded in agreement. Poor Percy, taken down by a pretty face. Sora and Izzy walked towards Mimi and stood beside her. The trio then intently watched Rosamund's attack dissipate, revealing Percy, who groaned in pain and then sighed, I'm never going to live that down, you know what? I'm done, I'll rather keep what little pride I have left. Izzy, Sora and Mimi relaxed, while Hercules, Kabuterimon, Rosamund, and Howman suddenly transformed back to their rookie forms. Bioman, Tintaman, and Palman sat on the ground and groaned. Bioman looked up towards Sora and said, Sora, I'm hungry. Tintaman nodded and then said, Yeah, me too, and Sora as well, everything hurts. Palman dropped on her back and sighed, I want food. And a nap. Izzy, Sora and Mimi shared a laugh. Mimi then stretched, before sighing and then relaxing, well, we still have to see what happens with the rest of the fights, but I'm sure Harry can cook us something, I'm kinda hungry too. Izzy nodded, yeah. I guess all of the digital energy we used made us burn through a lot of calories. Sora smiled and then looked up towards Harry. Harry's home cooking sounds really good right now, he's the best cook we know. Percy coughed and then sat up, then let's go watch the other fights and then ask Dad to make us something, I'm super hungry too. With that decided, Mimi, Sora, Izzy, and Percy began to make their way toward, where Bianca, TK, Carrie, Joe, and Mako were fighting, to see what would happen. One battle between the DG Destined and the demigods has been resolved. The DG Destined were able to win against Percy, but what will happen with the battles against Bianca and Thalia? Chapter 214. Bianca, engulfed in her element of shadows and darkness, moved in a black blur around the battlefield. Magna Angeman immediately clashed against her, hoping to both slow her down and distract her, but in this form, Bianca was far more powerful than before. In one of the clashes between Magna Angeman and Bianca, she caught his holy energy sword with the edge of her scythe, pulled him around, and then kicked him away on the side of his body. Magna Angeman grunted in pain and was shot forward and away from Bianca. Before she could continue to attack the Holy Angel Digimon, Crackman rushed forward and lashed out with a continuous claw attack. Bianca moved her body and slipped inches away from Crackman's claws. Crackman growled in frustration but soon hopped, spun like a top in front of Bianca, and then lashed out with a powerful spin kick. Bianca quickly blocked it with her scythe and a loud clang echoed throughout the area from the impact. A shockwave followed soon after, but the demi-goddess spun her scythe like a propeller in front of her, causing Crackman's leg to get caught by the movement. the ultimate level Digimon squeaked in surprise as she was forced to spin at high speed. Bianca suddenly released Mi Crackman, leaving her spinning in mid-air, until Bianca waved her arm towards the spinning Mi Crackman. Her cloak suddenly came to life, created a giant fist made of shadows, and lashed out with a massive punch towards Mi Crackman. The punch crashed against Mi Crackman's body, causing her to gasp and then scream in pain, as she was sent flying away from Bianca, who then quickly moved her head to the side and avoided a celestial arrow from Angewoman. Bianca narrowed her eyes as Angewoman began to shoot celestial arrow after celestial arrow at her. As Bianca dodged the barrage of holy light arrows, she suddenly took off running towards Angewoman, as her cloak of shadows let out a multitude of tendrils, that took the shape of swords and began to slash at the celestial arrows, destroying them on contact. She soon arrived in front of Angewoman and hopped up a bit, coming down on a wide downward slash. A second later, Angewoman jumped back, but it seemed like Bianca's scythe would cut her anyway, but, out of nowhere, a pink barrier with the crest of light materialized in front of Angewoman. Bianca clicked her tongue in annoyance upon seeing her scythe crash against the barrier. Her scythe destroyed the barrier on contact, but it still gave Angewoman a few precious seconds to jump away from her attack. Angewoman smiled as Carrie stood behind her with her hand up and flashing with her pink digital energy. Angewoman immediately pounced back toward Bianca the second her feet touched the ground. After jumping back, she quickly engulfed her hand with her holy energy and then attacked Bianca as hard as she could. Holy slap! Bianca widened her eyes in shock and immediately moved her head back, in order not to get hit by Angewoman's slap. Angewoman frowned when she missed, as a shockwave blasted everything around them. Her holy slap dispersed in a second, creating an explosion of holy light. Bianca pushed herself away from Angewoman and then sweat dropped after she saw the power behind the attack Angewoman just tried to hit her with. Did you just try to bitch slap me? Angewoman giggled and then smiled at Bianca. Holy bitch slap you actually. Bianca gaped at Angewoman for a second before getting agitated and pointing her finger at Angewoman. There is nothing holy in that damn slap. Why are all the angels I know so brutal and crazy? In the Potter household, Gabriel was reading a report on the research on 1-up mushrooms, when she suddenly and violently sneezed. She sniffed soon after and then frowned as she looked around. Why do I feel like punishing one of my daughters? Offenman was humming and watering the flower bed outside the Neo-Kyoto Healing Temple. These flowers were planted by the orphans Harry had brought to Neo-Kyoto and she's always taking care of them. However, she suddenly sneezed, causing water to fly everywhere. She soon sniffed and shook her head. Okay, that was weird. I wonder if someone was talking ill of me. Offenman soon shrugged and went back to humming and watering the flowers, all with a content and soft smile on her face. Angewoman's sweat dropped at what Bianca had said and wondered just how crazy the other angels Bianca knows were, for her to react like that. Carrie just laughed and shook her head. Knowing how Harry is, she could guess how crazy even an angel could get after being with him for a while. However, Bianca didn't get much more time to complain, for Zudaman appeared from above Bianca, his hammer at the ready and engulfed with yellow lightning, Vulcan's hammer. Zudaman swung his hammer down hard. Bianca looked up and raised a hand. Her cloak reacted and immediately formed a massive pair of shadow hands that caught Zudaman's attack. Bianca grunted as the ground beneath her cracked and cratered. Zudaman roared and pushed harder on his attack, causing Bianca to bend a knee. Suddenly, Magna Angewoman, and Mi Crackman prepared their attack to hit her, while she was busy holding back Zudaman's attacks. Celestial Arrow, Angewoman yelled out, as she fired an overcharged version of her signature attack toward Bianca. Soul Vanisher, Magna Angewoman hit his holy sword on the ground, creating an energy wave that headed straight to Bianca. Mi Crackman clapped her hand and then created an orb of purple holy light and fired it towards Bianca. The demi-goddess gritted her teeth as she saw the attacks coming, while she was being held down by Zudaman's Vulcan's hammer. Soon after the attacks collided against her, as Zudaman's attack broke through Bianca's defense and slammed his hammer on top of her, the combined collision of all four attacks detonated into a loud and massive explosion. Carrie, Mako, Joe, and TK grunted and held their ground as the shockwave from the explosion went through them, while their Digimon partners jumped back and covered their bodies with their arms. Being closer to the explosion, left them in a bit of danger from being caught in the explosion. But, the explosion didn't even get the chance to spread, for from within it, Bianca's voice loudly called out, "Black rotation!" A massive black dome of shadows spread out from inside the explosion, dispersing it and vanishing it from the battlefield. However, the black dome didn't stop there and continued to spread out. The Digimon were caught by surprise by the sudden and unexpected attack and were stuck by the black spinning dome. Angewoman, Zudaman, Magna Angewoman, and Mi Crackman yelled and roared in pain as the black dome ground against their body and then sent them ragdolling away from it. Their DG-destined partners gasped and watched as their Digimon were violently sent flying, as the black dome dispersed and revealed Bianca, who sighed and shook her head feeling a bit dizzy. Phew. I'm so glad Auntie Hanabi taught me how to do that one. That was close. Joe, Carrie, Mako, and TK immediately ran towards their Digimon partners to check up on them. Bianca's last attack looked like it hit hard. Carrie immediately reached Angewoman who was in a tree upside down. Carrie looked up at her Digimon partner and quickly called out to her, Angewoman. Are you okay? Angewoman nodded but then nervously laughed. I'm okay Carrie, just embarrassed with the way you found me. Carrie giggled and shook her head. Come on, let's get you untangle out of there. Angewoman nodded and then gaped as Carrie suddenly spread a pair of wings that looked just like hers, and then watched Carrie fly up to her. Carrie. Carrie smiled at Angewoman and then shrugged. I don't know, I just felt that I could do this and I did it. To be honest, I'm excited about this. I've always wanted to have wings as pretty as yours. Angewoman smiled at Carrie and nodded. The DG destined of light soon went about untangling Angewoman from the tree branches. Joe reached Zudaman, who ended up belly down on the ground. He quickly ran up to the front of Zudaman's face and hugged it. Buddy. Speak to me. Are you okay? Zudaman groaned in pain and then said, Joe, you're going to be a doctor right? Cause I think I need one right now. Joe chuckled and shook his head in amusement. I still have a few years of study before that happens, buddy. Zudaman huffed in annoyance and then began to try to get up. That sucks. I need one right about now. Mako ran towards me Crackman, who was sitting against a boulder, with her eyes in spirals and looking very dizzy. Mako reached me Crackman and hugged her arm. May. Are you okay? Me Crackman shook her head and then huffed. Owie, that really hurt. Mako hugged me Crackman's arm tighter and then looked up at her. Can you keep fighting? Me Crackman smiled at her human partner and nodded. Of course I can, we can do this Mako. Mako smiled at her Digimon partner and then nodded. Meanwhile, TK was in front of a kneeling Magna Angeman and was checking up on him. Are you good? That attack looked very powerful. Magna Angeman chuckled and nodded. I'm fine Takeru, kinda regret hatching from my DG egg right now but otherwise, I'm battle ready. TK laughed at his Digimon's humorous comment and then nodded. Then let's take it up a notch. We can do this, we've done it before, remember. Magna Angeman knew immediately what TK was talking about. You mean, like that time we helped Willis and Terry RMON? TK nodded and held onto his smartphone. That's right. You were able to reach your mega level form. Something in me tells me we can do it again now. This time however, I think something new and amazing will happen. Are you ready? Magna Angeman nodded and then stood up. He then sent a grin to TK. I'm always ready. Let's go. TK's body suddenly exploded with yellow digital energy as his crest of hope manifested behind him. Magna Angeman spread his arm open as his body became yellow digital energy and merged with TK's for a few moments, until it shot upwards into the sky, leaving TK with his smartphone glowing yellow and pulsating with energy. The yellow digital energy coalesced into an egg, which glowed brightly and from inside, Magna Angeman's voice suddenly called out, Magna Angeman. Digivolve to Gold Ramon. A massive golden six-winged dragon emerged from the yellow digital energy egg and flew straight to Bianca who huffed and rolled her eyes. Great, a mega-level Digimon and one that I don't know about. What happened to Seraphimon? Gold Ramon grinned at Bianca as he flew towards her at high speed. Looks like TK wanted to try something new against you. Gold Ramon swung his arm towards Bianca and lashed out with a punch from his massive form. Bianca immediately pointed her hand forward and her shadow cloak immediately reacted. The shadows in her cloak instantly created a barrier around her. But the moment Gold Ramon's fist collided against her barrier, she was sent skidding back from the force behind the punch. Bianca gritted her teeth as she was being sent skidding back. Suddenly, Gold Ramon pounced forward and attacked Bianca again before she could recover. He raised his fist and engulfed it with his holy energy. He then swung it down as hard as he could toward Bianca, while calling out his attack, Gold Fist. Gold Ramon's attack crashed on top of Bianca's barrier. The holy energy on the attack detonated upon contact, shattering her barrier and engulfing her in a massive explosion of holy light. Bianca screamed in pain as she was overtaken and engulfed by the explosion. However, Bianca suddenly burst out of the explosion into the sky, her shadow cloak having turned into two massive black dragonic wings. She looked down towards Gold Ramon and frowned. That actually hurt, a lot. She quickly spun her scythe and then dropped down towards Gold Ramon. The mega-level Holy Dragon Digimon immediately rushed towards Bianca and began to clash against her. TK seeing this immediately turned his head toward Mako, Carrie, and Joe and called out to them, "Come on guys. We can't let her adapt. We have to attack her non-stop until she goes down." Carrie nodded and then jumped down the tree she was on. Ange woman, free from the tree branches, twirled down in midair and then floated down. Carrie grabbed hold of her smartphone and looked up towards her Digimon partner. "Well, we better help those two, you know how they can't do anything without us." Ange woman nodded and then giggled, "That's true, but do you think we can do it? After we were able to reach my mega level form that one time, we were never able to do it again." Carrie nodded with a smile on her face and then said, "We can do it, I just know we can, we just needed a push and this is perfect, do that. Let's show Harry what we're made of." Kari's body suddenly exploded with pink digital energy as his crest of light manifested behind her. Ange woman beautifully smiled and spread her wings wide open as her body became pink digital energy and merged with Kari's for a few moments, until it shot upwards into the sky, leaving Carrie with her smartphone glowing pink and pulsating with energy. The pink digital energy coalesced into an egg, which glowed brightly, and from inside, Ange woman's voice suddenly called out, "Ange woman! Digivolve to Magnadraman!" From the pink digital energy, a massive furry pink dragon emerged and roared as she immediately rushed towards where Gold Ramon and Bianca were clashing. Eri stared with her eyes wide open at the new Mega Digimon. She quickly turned around and spoke to her father, "Daddy, what Digimon are those? I thought Ophanemon and Seraphimon were their next Digivolution form." Harry smiled at his daughter's surprised expression. "They're not just Digi-destined anymore, Eri, they're no longer limited to a single Digivolution line. That's why Magna Angeman was able to digivolve into Gold Ramon. He has digivolved into Seraphimon before though." As for Carrie, well, her Digimon partner's Digivolution line was influenced by mine and her brother's influence. That's why Angewoman's mega form has always been Magnadraman instead of Ophanemon. A holy dragon Digimon that can use holy fire. Because of Tai and I, Kari's personality has become what it is, and that growth manifested in this Digivolution, though I don't doubt she can digivolve Angewoman into Ophanemon if she wanted. Seraphal looked odd towards the holy dragon Digimon, especially Magnadraman. She looks so cute and fluffy. I want to cuddle with Magnadraman now. Harry laughed and shook his head. Only Seraphal would think that cuddling a holy dragon mega-level Digimon is the right thing to do. Yasaka giggled at Seraphal's words and then shook her head. Still, those two dragons feel like they're on par with Drake and Albion before they got turned into sacred gears, maybe even stronger. Eri smiled and immediately scanned the two new Digimon Digivolutions, starting with Gold Ramon. Gold Ramon is a holy dragon Digimon. One of the 4 great dragons, it is a god dragon Digimon with 6 hardened wings and a body that shines gold. It wears a holy ring around its left arm. Also, the tiny dragon Digimon sealed within the vambrace on Goldramon's right hand is called Amen of the Crimson Flame, who governs over destruction, and the one sealed within the vambrace on its left hand is called Uman of the Blue Lightning, who governs over regeneration. It exorcises evil with its fists of sacred light, and its over-leveled holy spirit and hidden magical power are the strongest among the 4 great dragons. Magnadraman is a holy dragon Digimon. It is a member of the Miracle 4 and the 4 great dragons. It is the ultimate form of God Beast Digimon. Its heroic appearance is reminiscent of a ruler of the sky. There are few who have seen its appearance, and it has not even been entirely confirmed where it usually is. However, it is said that it suddenly appeared out of nowhere once when a gigantic evil energy was generated in the digital world, and laid waste to the evil with its vast power. Eri widely smiled and then cheered, "Dragon gods? Whoa! Even the digital world has more of us." Harry chuckled and nodded, "Yes, though those 4 are only around heavenly dragon level compared to us. My Magnadraman and Godraman are well beyond dragon god level though. Still, these 2 are among some of the most powerful Digimon in the digital world. Plus there are holy dragons as well." Magnadraman rushed forward waving her massive serpentine-like body side to side, towards Bianca. Gold Ramon sensed her and grinned. He quickly caught Bianca's scythe with his massive claw, Bianca not expecting such a maneuver, and widened her eyes in surprise. Only for a second later to scream in surprise when Godraman suddenly pulled her back and then swung her up. Bianca continued to scream as her body spun and twirled upwards until she spread her wing and stopped herself in mid-air. However, a roar caught her attention and she immediately turned around in mid-air, only to come face to face with Magnadraman, who opened her mouth wide and gathered a massive amount of holy fire. "Let's see if your shadows can protect you from this." Fire tornado. A massive tornado of holy fire shot outwards from Magnadraman's jaw and crashed into Bianca, who had no time to even try to move away. the fire tornado engulfed her entire body and then proceeded to drag her along its trajectory, while Bianca screamed in pain. The spiraling flames came down from the sky like a comet, until they crashed into the ground, exploding into a massive torrent of flames. Joe, seeing the opening, got ready to join the fight as well. "This our chance, Zudaman." Zudaman nodded and stood up tall. "Time to bring in the pain." Joe's body suddenly exploded with grey digital energy as his crest of reliability manifested behind him. Zudaman raised his hammer and roared as his body became grey digital energy and merged with Joe's for a few moments, until it shot upwards into the sky, leaving Joe with his smartphone glowing grey and pulsating with energy. The grey digital energy coalesced into an egg, which glowed brightly, and from inside, Zudaman's voice suddenly roared out, "Zudaman! Digivolve to Vikaman!" Vikaman dropped from the grey digital energy egg, landing behind Joe. He then took off running towards where the torrent of flames was dissipating. Shadows and darkness suddenly exploded from the remaining flames, and Bianca emerged from the flames with her shadow cloak completely covering her now, though the cloak now looked like pitch black armor with a hood on her head. Bianca immediately turned her head towards Vikaman, and everyone could see her black eyes glowing from behind the shadows of her hood. Vikaman quickly swung his morning star down towards Bianca. Bianca jumped up, and then twirled around the morning star. She reached above Vikaman and then spun around at high speed before swinging down at Vikaman with her scythe ready to strike him. Vikaman only had enough time to move his massive form to the side to allow his shoulder shield pauldrons to take the blow. The massive mega-level Digimon was then pushed back by the force behind Bianca's attack. He quickly recovered and gathered his digital energy into his jaws, before calling out his attack and firing it, Bazooka Howl. A massive sound wave shot outwards for Vikaman's jaws and headed straight to Bianca, but she quickly covered her body with her shadow dragon wings. She still got sent flying back, and before she could recover completely, she was rushed attacked by Magnadramon and Gold Ramon. Bianca found herself punched to the side by Gold Ramon and then clawed towards the ground by Magnadramon. She dropped down towards the ground at high speed, but she quickly spun her body around and landed feet first onto the ground, cracking it and uplifting it. She quickly pushed herself upwards and took off flying towards the two holy dragons and began to clash against them full force. Vikaman rushed forward and began to shoot at Bianca with more bazooka howls from below, while Magnadramon and Gold Ramon fought her off with holy fire and holy light. Blasts of red, yellow, and light blue lit up the sky as Mako watched the battle between mega-level Digimon and the demi-goddess. Being a new member of the DG Destined, has left her a bit behind when it comes to experiencing things like a battle of this magnitude. Sure, she heard the stories about her friends' adventures in the digital world, the many evil Digimon they had to fight, and the battles of this magnitude that they were involved in, but hearing something and then experiencing it, were two different things, and Mako was just realizing that. She began to doubt herself a bit after watching this battle. She never had to fight something this intensely before, so she began to wonder if this was something everyone else felt, and if so, how did they deal with it? With the fear, the doubt, and the sheer pressure, she didn't think she was ready for a fight of this magnitude, but then again, none of her friends were when they had to fight back when they were younger. These emotions made her feel like a coward, and she didn't like it. It was bad enough that she was shy and a nervous wreck, but a coward? No, she didn't want to be that. She wanted to be with her friends forever, with Harry. She wanted to fight for that dream. But how? How can she fight alongside them, when she's so far behind everyone? Mako looked down and sadly stared at her smartphone. Why was she hesitant now? Why was she afraid? What is she supposed to do with this now? Suddenly, a massive furry paw grabbed hold of Mako's hand, the one holding onto her smartphone. Mako's eyes widened, and looked up, only to see Crackman's smiling face looking down at her. It's okay to be afraid, Mako, but don't let it hold you back. Everyone must have felt afraid at some point, but they never let that hold them back. Even Harry must have been afraid at some point, and look at him now. Mako looked up towards Harry. She saw him floating up there in the sky looking at her. She stared back into his eyes. Harry then softly smiled at her and gave her a nod. It seemed like he heard Crackman's words and responded. So Harry has been afraid before as well. Mako frowned as she remembered how Harry told her how his journey started, how he was just a lonely, hurt, and scared little boy on the verge of dying. Mako turned to look at Crackman and gave her a nod. You're right, May. I can't let my doubts and fear hold me back. I want to be with everyone forever. I want to have fun. Marry Harry. Have kids and then take them into the digital world to find their own Digimon partners. But I can't do all of that if I let my fear overtake me now. I have to fight, to protect these bonds of mine. Mako's body suddenly exploded with white digital energy as her crest of bonds manifested behind her. Me Crackman softly smiled and nodded to Mako. That's right Mako, let's protect our bonds, together. Me Crackman stepped away from Mako and gave her one more smile, before her body became white digital energy and merged with Mako's for a few moments, until it shot upwards into the sky, leaving Mako with her smartphone glowing white and pulsating with energy. The white digital energy coalesced into an egg, which glowed brightly, and from inside, Me Crackman's soft voice suddenly called out, Me Crackman. Digivolve to Razielman. Play Digimon Adventure 2020, be the winner's host. Mako was awed as Razielman burst out of the white digital energy egg and floated above her. Razielman looked down at Mako and then winked at her, let's fight together Mako. Mako smiled and nodded, her digital energy suddenly exploded out of her body and she took off flying towards Razielman. She quickly landed on her shoulder and stood there. Mako suddenly giggled which caught Razielman's attention, what's so funny? Mako giggled for another second and then shook her head, she then beautifully smiled at Razielman as she explained why she suddenly laughed, oh, I was just thinking how funny this situation is, you ride on my shoulders all the time, when you're Mikuman and look at me now, I'm the one on your shoulders now. Razielman giggled and nodded, she then looked up towards the battle and softly said, Mako, I'm so happy I met you, Dan. Mako teared up, but nodded and cheerfully smiled, me too Mei-chan, Dan. Both DG Destined and Digimon Partner then looked towards the fight, with one strong flap from her wings, Razielman took off into the sky and headed straight into the battle. Yasaka widened her eyes as she saw Razielman, she was surprised there was a holy Digimon similar to a Nikomata, that's actually surprising, an angel Digimon in the form of a cat girl, we should get some cat ears for Gabriel. Sirafal immediately nodded, yes. I'll buy some online later and have her wear them all the time. Harry chuckled and shook his head, knowing Gabriel, she'll wear them wherever she goes with a smile on her face. Yasaka then turned her head towards Harry and grinned at him, you heard Mako right? That girl seems to really like you Harry, she's already thinking about marrying you and having kids, it's adorable really. Sirafal nodded and smiled, her idea of taking her future children to the digital world to get their own Digimon partners, sounds like fun too. Harry softly smiled as he turned to look at Mako, who was still on Razielman's shoulder as the mega-level Digimon flew up to the battle, we'll see what happens in the future, I'll accept her feelings when she's ready to tell me. Yasaka giggled and nodded, looks like Mako might win at getting your heart first Harry. Sirafal grinned and then piped in, Sora, Carrie, Mimi, and Yuli better get their head in the game. Or they will be left behind. Harry just smiled but didn't say anything else, he's well aware of the girls' feelings for him, but he wants them to first get used to their new lives in Neo-Kyoto, later, they can see what happens regarding their relationships. Kurogano. Chapter 215. Razielman rushed forward towards Bianca, while Mako stood on her shoulder ready to support her Digimon partner, both were ready to fight and face off against the demi-goddess of death. Bianca was too busy defending against Vicomon, Magnadramon and Goldramon, to even notice a fourth mega-level Digimon coming her way at an incredible speed. That is, until the last second, when Razielman suddenly blurred in front of Bianca, causing her to widen her eyes in surprise. Razielman took advantage of Bianca's caught-off-guard reaction and spread her arms wide open. 5 magic circles materialized from Razielman's arms and back. Bianca immediately sensed the surge of energy coming from the magic circles and quickly tried to fly away, however, Mako suddenly surprised her by swinging her arm towards her, the arm where her vital bracelet is on. Out of nowhere, a white energy rope stretched out of Mako's vital bracelet and wrapped around Bianca, stopping her retreat on the spot. Bianca gasped stunned and shocked at the surprise maneuver from the DG Destined of Bonds. Mako smiled at her and then pulled on the energy rope. Bianca grunted when she felt the energy rope tighten around her, but she didn't get any more time to react in any other way, for Razielman fired her attack soon after she was fully trapped. Knowledge Stream. An enormous blast of elemental digital energy shot forward and struck the bounded demi-goddess. Bianca screamed in pain as the attack engulfed her completely and then detonated. Bianca was immediately sent flying back and towards the ground from the force behind the explosion. Her body reached the ground a split second later, slammed against it harshly, and then proceeded to ragdoll away for a while. But the demi-goddess wasn't ready to lose yet. After ragdolling for a few moments, she suddenly pushed herself off the ground and then landed on her feet. She quickly stabbed her scythe into the ground to stop her momentum, but it was still so strong, that she still skidded away for a few seconds more before coming to a stop. Once she had stopped herself, Bianca looked up and glared at the DG Destined. Great, 4 mega-level Digimon and 3 that I don't recognize, looks like I can't hold back anymore. Bianca stood up straight but suddenly winced a bit in pain. Her body had taken quite a bit of damage from the point-blank knowledge stream, and even with her shadow armor on, that attack still hurt a lot. Still, Bianca didn't want to lose. Not when she was the one who shares a domain with both of her fathers, Death, a domain that she inherited from her father Hades, and one that she shares with her papa Harry. In any other circumstance, Harry would have been her boss, just like he was to her father Hades, but because he adopted her, her domain over Death had become so much more powerful. Her connection with Death was even stronger than her father Hades. Her papa Harry had to teach her how to harness that domain to its fullest, so Bianca wasn't ready to lose. Instead, she opened the gates to her power, wide open. Mako, TK, Carrie, and Joe widened their eyes in shock when Bianca was suddenly engulfed by a pillar of pure darkness and shadows. The pillar then spread out and shot upwards towards the sky, drowning the sunlight and covering the area in pure darkness. The DG Destined and their Digimon partners looked around in apprehension. Bianca had disappeared in the pillar of darkness and shadows, and once it dissipated, leaving the world covered in darkness, they lost sight of the demi-goddess. Carrie frowned and looked around. Where is she? I can't see her. Magnadramon frowned and nodded. I can't sense her either. It's like she disappeared from this dimension, sort of like when Harry uses one of those dark corridors of his. Carrie frowned as she digested the information she got from Magnadramon. Joe looked from side to side, like Harry's dark corridor? Then that means... TK widened his eyes and suddenly yelled out, everyone, watch out! She going to attack from anywhere or every woof. TK was violently shaken when Bianca suddenly appeared by his side and kneed him in the gut. TK bent over her knee and was sent flying back, then hit the ground and began rolling. Gold Ramon widened his eyes and immediately called out to his human partner, TK. TK stopped rolling on the ground a few moments later and then lay unconscious on the ground. Gold Ramon suddenly glowed with a yellow light and then evolved back into Patamon. The little rookie-level Digimon suddenly dropped from the sky from the sudden loss of energy, but Magnadramon quickly caught him in her claw. But Razielman immediately realized what Bianca was planning. She going after our human partners. Magnadramon and Vicamon widened their eyes in realization and immediately rushed to their human partner's side to protect them. Razielman had Mako on her shoulders so she was safe. Knowing that, the mega-level Digimon instead began to fire her knowledge stream attack at Bianca, hoping to distract her, but the demi-goddess vanished in an instant once again, causing Razielman's attack to hit the ground instead of her. Carrie, seeing that both Patamon and TK were out of the fight, immediately raised a barrier, but Bianca suddenly appeared in front of it and hit the barrier with her scythe. Carrie winced and grunted in pain as Bianca's attack hit her barrier hard, but she held strong. The demi-goddess, however, immediately disappeared again and then began to constantly reappear and disappear around Kari's barrier while attacking it non-stop. Carrie began to scream in pain from the force behind the attacks and the constant barrage. Until her eyes widened, rolled back, and then, she finally fell face first onto the ground unconscious. Magnadramon suddenly glowed pink, and then evolved back into Gatamon, and both she and Patamon then fell to the ground unconscious. Luckily for both of them, Magnadramon was already close to the ground while on her way to help Carrie. So they just dropped to the ground and lay there unconscious. Joe panicked and watched as Bianca suddenly reappeared in front of him. He quickly covered his body with his arms in fright, and as Bianca sent a punch towards him, Vicamon suddenly jumped towards her and swung one of his morning stars at her. Bianca blocked the morning star with her scythe and was then sent flying back from the hit, but instead of dropping to the ground or slamming against something, she vanished into the shadows and darkness covering the area. Razielman suddenly dropped from the sky beside Joe and called out to him, Joe! Get on Vicamon's shoulder! Hurry! Joe instantly nodded and rushed towards Vicamon, but before he could reach him, hands and arms made out of shadows suddenly sprouted from the ground and grabbed hold of his legs, causing Joe to stop in his tracks and scream in fright. Vicamon and Razielman rushed forward towards Joe, but multiple tentacles of shadows shot out of the darkness around the DG Destined and whipped at the mega-level Digimon. Vicamon was struck in the face, causing him to grunt in pain and flinch away. Razielman covered her body with a digital magic circle but was pushed and sent skidding away from Joe and Vicamon. From the force which the shadow tentacles hit her digital magic circle barrier with was strong enough to send her quite the distance away. Joe squirmed and grunted while trying to escape the shadow hands that had him in their grasp, but he wasn't strong enough. Bianca suddenly appeared beside Joe and slammed the butt of her scythe on his temple. Joe's head whipped to the side and then slumped unconscious within the shadow hand's grasp. Razielman stopped skidding on the ground and glared at Bianca. The demi-goddess was breathing hard and seemed tired right now. She, however, grinned at Razielman and Mako. I have always thought that a Digimon tamer is a Digimon's true weakness, though that's not really true with Papa Harry, Airy, or even Nejire. Attacking them is a bad idea after all, but you guys? Not only do you not know the true extent of your new abilities, you're not used to them, nor can everyone use them either. Bianca turned her head towards Carrie, she then breathed in hard and coughed a bit. Carrie proved that she couldn't handle the backlash of my attack hitting her barrier and ended up taking damage. Suddenly, the shadows and darkness began to diminish and disappear from around the area. Bianca huffed and shook her head, damn. I still can't hold this for too long. I was hoping to be able to take you down too before it dissipated. Mako looked around and seemed nervous as the color began to reappear in the world. She then turned her head towards Bianca and asked, what was that? Bianca dropped to her knees and laughed a bit. That was just me spreading my domain over death around the area. For some reason, it spreads darkness and shadows into the real world and becomes some sort of enclosed dimension. As you can see, I can move invisible and undetected, almost instantly as well. I think it's something like Papa Harry's invisibility cloak, but I can't maintain it for too long yet. It's too bad. I almost won too. Bianca suddenly dropped unconscious face first onto the ground and began to loudly snore. Both Mako and Razielman's sweat dropped at the scene before them. Before Razielman suddenly sighed and shook her head, thank goodness, that technique or whatever it was very scary. Mako nodded and then turned her head towards where Joe, TK, and Carrie lay unconscious, but Bianca was right, we're a big weakness to you guys, you can defend yourselves, but I, and the others. Razielman nodded in agreement. To be honest, Tai and the others were lucky that Harry was always there to protect them. Who knows how many evil Digimon would have gone after them, just to get rid of their Digimon partners. Razielman then began to walk towards everyone and picked them up in her arms, even Bianca. She then began to walk towards where Tai, Matt, and Thalia were facing off. Meanwhile, Mako looked down at her smartphone and vital bracelet. She knew that if she wanted to be by Harry's side, she had to get strong. She couldn't be a liability to him, nor would she ever accept being one either. She had to learn how to use these new powers and grow stronger with Razielman, so she vowed to train and grow. Maybe I should ask Harry for training, that way I can spend some more time with him too. Yes, that sounds nice. Yasaka smiled as she turned her head towards Harry. That was impressive. I'm sure you taught Bianca how to do that, hey? Harry chuckled and shook his head. No, not really. Bianca's domain and connection to the concept of death is a bit unique. Her domain over death is connected to the concept of fear of the unknown. After all living beings fear death because they don't know or understand what comes next. To some, it is just an end, but that very concept is manifested in shadows and darkness for Bianca. When she spreads her divinity and lets her concept overwrite reality, it becomes her domain, which is why the area was covered in shadows and darkness. She can also move undetected while using her power. After all, you never know where or when death is coming for you. She can move and be unseen because she's already there to begin with. She wasn't teleporting or even moving. Bianca was in the same place all along, and all she had to do was to want to attack, for her to do so. But the upkeep of this technique is enormous. It's a very powerful technique, but until she has better control over her power and divinity, she'll keep being on a timer every time she uses it. Sirafal looked over to where Razielman was flying to and watched as Bianca was in her hand, completely out and snoring loudly. Ah, so that's why she fell unconscious. She overused her power and her body shut down. Will she be okay? Harry nodded and smiled. She'll be fine. She just needs some rest and maybe a miracle gel, but she will recover soon enough. I'm still surprised she was able to take down 3DG Destined though. She must have been trying really hard to be able to last for that long while doing that technique. She has come a long way with it. Mako and Razielman finally reached the edge of the battlefield between Matt, Tai, Metal Greymon, Wargaruruman, and Thalia. There they found the other Digimon already watching the battles between the DG Destined of Courage, Friendship, their Digimon partners, and Thalia. Sora, Izzy, Mimi, and Percy immediately turned their head over to Razielman when she landed. Razielman then gently placed the unconscious TK, Carrie, Joe, and Bianca on the ground beside their Digimon. Sora and Mimi gasped and immediately ran towards their friends to check on them. Meanwhile, Mako floated down and softly landed in front of Razielman. The Mega-level Holy Digimon suddenly lit up with a white light, and then digivolved back to Mikuman. The Rookie-level Digimon sighed and then dropped on her butt completely tired. Ooh. I'm so sore and hungry. Izzy walked over to her and chuckled. Yeah, the first time a Digimon reaches their Mega level, it takes a great toll on their bodies, especially when they're not used to digivolving. Mikuman nodded but then eeped when a powerful shockwave swept over the whole area. Mimi and Sora screamed in surprise while holding on to Kari's and TK's unconscious bodies. Percy, who was checking on Bianca, grunted and hugged his little sister to keep her safe. Mako squeaked in surprise and looked over towards the battle and watched as Wargaruruman suddenly punched Thalia, who retaliated with a massive thunderbolt to the body. Both fighters were sent away from each other, but stopped themselves in midair and went back to clashing against each other. Mako looked on with wide eyes open. This battle was far more fierce than the one she had. The DG destined of Bonds suddenly noticed something and quickly began to look around. Where's Tai? Tai was pointing his hand toward Thalia while condensing his digital energy into an orb. He began to sweat as he poured more and more digital energy into his attack, trying to keep it small and condensed. Matt suddenly noticed the bright orange light coming from Tai's direction and turned his head towards it. He immediately noticed that Tai was doing something. Matt grinned and then decided to help. He quickly turned his head towards Wargaruruman and called out to him, "Wargaruruman! Get her in position!" Wargaruruman heard Matt and immediately unleashed a Cause Slugger on Thalia. The demi-goddess also heard Matt, but she was confused at his words and unable to do anything as she got too busy blocking Wargaruruman's attack. Meanwhile, the ultimate level Digimon noticed the bright orange light that was Tai's attack on his peripheral vision. Understanding that Tai was planning something and that Matt wanted him to help him, Wargaruruman immediately began to move Thalia into position with his Cause Slugger. Thalia was too busy dodging and blocking the high-speed, sharp energy blades coming at her, to even notice that she was being pushed towards a certain direction. She did notice the bright orange light though, and she became alerted to Tai. But before she could say or do anything, Wargaruruman's Sagittarius mobility equipment suddenly opened and shifted its shoulders part. Wargaruruman growled and then called out his next attack, Alnus Shot. Two cannon lasers shot outwards from Wargaruruman's shoulders and instantly slammed against Thalia. The attack was so fast that she couldn't even try to dodge and could only scream as the two laser beams engulfed her and then pushed her back toward Tai. Tai saw the powerful two laser beams coming his way, but instead of getting nervous or afraid, he smiled and then called out the name of his attack. "This is my first time trying this and I'm just copying my best buddy here. But I hope you like it, Terra Force." The bright orange orb in front of Tai's open palm suddenly shot forward with the force of a cannon, causing Tai to grunt in pain, but his Terra Force attack worked and shot forward, meeting against Wargaruruman's Alnus Shot. Thalia, who was in the middle of both attacks, was once again engulfed in a massive blast of energy. Both orange and blue energy attacks merged and then violently exploded, creating a massive shockwave that swept all over the area. But Tai wasn't done. He held his hurt arm with his good one and then called out to Metal Greymon, "Goo! Do it, Metal Greymon!" Metal Greymon roared and then pointed his ALTE Rouse cannon towards the explosion and roared out his attack, Positron Blaster. Suddenly, Metal Greymon's chest ports began to glow and then fired another attack, Giga Storm. A high-temperature energy wave shot out of Metal Greymon's chest ports, and traveled below Metal Greymon's Positron Blaster. Both powerful attacks flew through the air and then crashed against the explosion caused by Tai's Terra Force and Wargaruruman's Alnus Shot colliding with each other. The explosion suddenly glowed bright and then exploded again. This time the explosion was massive and powerful, enough to cause mass devastation around the area. The other DG Destined and Percy screamed in fright from the force behind the explosion. But Tai kept looking towards the explosion, looking for any sign from Thalia, only for a loud and thunderous roar to shake the area. The explosion suddenly dissipated, revealing a very hurt Thalia, wounds and burns covering her body. Though Tai could see that they were healing already, but even her clothes were looking very damaged, which made him blush a bit, since Thalia's body was being semi-revealed. On Thalia's side though, she was breathing hard from both the pain she was feeling and from what she had to do to dissipate the explosion. "Damn, that hurt too much. I haven't felt this hurt in a while." Thalia narrowed her eyes at Tai. He saw him blushing at her, but she ignored that, though she did feel a bit embarrassed and flattered. However, she quickly shook her head and sighed. "Looks like I'm going to have to go all out. I wanted to show this to Mog and Hope first, but I don't feel like losing like this." Thalia huffed and then closed her eyes. She then smiled as her divinity and element exploded from her body. A massive surge of blue electricity began to lash all around her, as her mouth became filled with fangs and horns began to grow on her head. Harry's eyes widened in surprise for about a second, but he then smiled and then chuckled. Looks like Thalia achieved it already. Ari, Lily, and Sherry immediately recognized what Thalia was doing and began to loudly cheer for her. Ari even began to clap and dance around in mid-air. She did it. Big sis Thalia did it. Yasaka giggled at Ari's excitement for her big sister. "Ah, so the first of the demigods has finally unlocked this transformation. Sirafal smiled at Yasaka and nodded, yet. Thalia is now a full-fledged dragon. Harry looked towards Thalia, and a proud smile appeared on his face as he watched his daughter transform into her dragon form. Thalia roared from the maelstrom of lightning and thunder, and she began to grow and grow until a massive blue and yellow dragon emerged from the maelstrom of energy and electricity. Thalia's dragon form immediately flew over towards Tai and Metal Greymon, ready to crush them. Metal Greymon quickly tried to fly away, while also firing a multitude of Giga Destroyers at Thalia, but the massive explosions didn't do anything to stop or even slow her down. Thalia reached Tai and Metal Greymon a second later and then punched the ultimate level Digimon away. Both Tai and Metal Greymon screamed in pain as they were sent flying back from the force behind Thalia's punch. Matt saw this and called out to his friend, Tai. Thalia heard Matt and turned her head to face him. She then opened her jaws wide and fired a massive beam of blue and yellow electricity at Matt. The DG destined of friendship widened his eyes and covered his face with his arms. Wargaruruman suddenly blurred in front of Matt and covered Matt with his body. The beam crashed against Wargaruruman's back, exploding into a massive explosion of blue and yellow electricity. Thalia then roared into the sky as a shockwave spread around her from her power. The ground even shook as her presence was made to the world. Tai and Metal Greymon stopped flying through the air when they crashed against a hill and destroyed it with their bodies. Tai groaned in pain and looked up to see Thalia roaring into the air. Shit, she can transform like Harry. Metal Greymon groaned and then looked up. Tai, how can we beat that? Tai frowned as he stared at Thalia's massive dragon form. That's a good question, buddy. Metal Greymon grunted and then stood up. Tai, who was lying on his head, also stood up. He held onto his injured arm and then looked down at it. I'm not going to be able to shoot another Terra Force, that recoil hit me hard. Metal Greymon sighed and then looked up. We're not going to give up, right? Tai grinned and shook his head. No way. We have faced bigger and far more dangerous foes before. We can beat her, Metal Greymon. We just need to believe in ourselves and bring out all of our power. Metal Greymon roared and then nodded. Then let's do it, Tai. Let's use all of our power. Tai nodded and let go of his hurt arm. He then pulled his smartphone out from his pocket and held it. Something amazing is coming, buddy. I can feel it. My heart is beating like crazy. Metal Greymon grinned and nodded. My heart is beating like crazy too, Tai. Suddenly, Tai's vital bracelet began to beep and let out a surge of orange digital energy. On the screen, Tai and Metal Greymon's hearts appeared in an 8-bit image. Both hearts began to beat at the same time until the vital bracelet suddenly exploded with a surge of orange digital energy, engulfing both Tai and Metal Greymon. Wargaruruman and Matt groaned in pain. Matt shook his head and then quickly looked over to Wargaruruman. Hey! Are you okay? Wargaruruman grunted in pain but nodded to Matt. I've been better, that attack had a lot of power in it. I can't move very well, Matt. Matt frowned. He knew that Wargaruruman had taken the full brunt of the attack for his sake, which made him feel guilty for his friend's condition. Wargaruruman suddenly chuckled, causing Matt to stare at him in confusion. Wargaruruman stopped chuckling and then grinned at Matt. Don't feel guilty, Matt. I will always protect you, because that's what I want to do. Now. We're not going to be giving up, are we? Matt stared into Wargaruruman's eyes for a second, until he huffed and shook his head in amusement. No, let's show Thalia our true power, Wargaruruman. My heart is beating hard. And it's screaming at me to fight on. Wargaruruman nodded and began to try to move and stand up. My heart is beating hard too. I don't want to lose. I don't want to give up. Not until I have given it my all. Suddenly, Matt's vital bracelet began to beep and let out a surge of blue digital energy. On the screen, Matt and Wargaruruman's hearts appeared in an 8-bit image. Both hearts began to beat at the same time until the vital bracelet suddenly exploded with a surge of blue digital energy, engulfing both Matt and Wargaruruman. Thalia was suddenly blinded by bright blue and orange lights. The hell is happening now? Both, the orange and blue light coalesced into two massive orbs of digital energy. Both orbs began to pulsate like heartbeats until they suddenly cracked and shattered. Wargaruruman's and Metal Greymons loudly called out from the orbs as they shattered. Metal Greymon. Alter Warp Digivolution 2. Blitz Greymon. Wargaruruman. Alter Warp Digivolution 2. Kresgaruruman. Harry's eyes widened who knows how many times now, as he heard and watched the new Digivolutions, 2 new Mega Digivolutions. Everyone else was awed at the 2 new Mega Digivolutions of Tai and Matt's Digimon partners. Eri even had sparks coming out of her in excitement. Oh! They look so cool! And look at all that red and gold armor. Harry nodded. He had to admit that these 2 new mega forms of Aguman and Gabuman looked impressive. They're really powerful as well. he could feel their digital energy pulsating from where he was. Harry then moved his gaze towards Matt and Tai. Both were riding on top of Kresgaruruman and Blitzgraymon's shoulders. Both Digimon are big enough that both Matt and Tai look tiny on their shoulders. But that's not what had Harry's attention. No, it was the fact that both their smartphone and vital bracelets were pulsating with the sound of a heartbeat. It's like their hearts are beating in sync. Play Digimon Adventure 2020 Opening, Mikakunin Haikuen. Tai and Matt stood on their Digimon partner's shoulders and narrowed their eyes at Thalia, who was now staring at them with her eye twitching in annoyance and cursing out loud. The image of a massive dragon doing this was funny to both the DG destined of courage and friendship, but they pushed that aside for now. Both raised their smartphones and held them tightly in their hands. Tai grinned and then called out to his Digimon partner, "Go! Blitzgraymon! Take her down!" Matt grinned as well and then also called out to his Digimon partner, "Get her Kresgaruruman!" Both mega-level Digimon roared into the heavens and then launched themselves at Thalia at Godspeed, something that took Thalia completely off guard. Blitzgraymon appeared above her in a flash of red light and then pointed at Thalia with his hand cannons. Plasma stake. A barrage of plasma stakes dropped from the air towards Thalia and stabbed into her back and wings. She immediately roared in pain, which only got worse when the plasma stakes exploded, causing internal damage to Thalia's innards. She couldn't even absorb the plasma either. It was far more than what she could process and absorb. She couldn't do it fast enough to negate the attack, not when she was being struck at the same time and at multiple places. But Thalia quickly shook off the pain and tried to attack. She quickly whipped her tail towards Blitzgraymon, but the mega-level Digimon easily moved out of the way. Thalia growled and got ready to blast Blitzgraymon away with an electro cannon. But Kresgaruruman suddenly appeared in a golden flash of light in front of her. He then grabbed his massive spear and grinned as he unleashed his attack on Thalia Beast Cyclone. Kresgaruruman spun his entire body and slashed at Thalia while his entire body became a blade. Thalia roared in pain, and blood splattered on the ground, but she suddenly released a massive burst of blue lighting, and the attack destroyed everything around her. Luckily for Kresgaruruman, his armor deflected the attack. Blitzgraymon released plasma particles into his surroundings and used them to erect a barrier around him and Tai. Elec barrier. Thalia growled and began to breathe hard. Her body was severely injured and she was getting tired. She wasn't used to fighting in her dragon form and she was burning through her energy reserves too fast. Huff, you guys are nuts, you just keep coming and coming for more. I feel bad for all your enemies. Especially if you are always jumping them like you are doing to me now. Tai and Matt chuckled and then smiled at Thalia. Tai pointed at his chest with his thumb and then said, "This is our true power. We never fight alone. And together we have overcome any enemies who tried to cause trouble to the real world and the digital world." Matt nodded and then grinned. This is what it means to be a DG destined. You never have to fight alone, because we all cover each other backs. Thalia grinned and then nodded. She then let all her remaining power explode from her body as a massive surge of blue electricity began to flow out her body. She then began to fly up as her energy and divinity gathered around her. I expect nothing less of Pop's friends. Show me. Prove to me that you are powerful enough to stand by his side. Thalia reached high above the sky and then roared as she opened her jaw wide. Her divinity, mana, and elemental energy began to coalesce inside her chest as she prepared for her last attack. Tai and Matt looked up and narrowed their eyes. Tai then turned his head towards Matt and grinned. Should we show her our ultimate form of teamwork? Matt grinned and nodded. Yeah. That sounds good. If we use Kresgaruruman and Blitzgraymon, I think we'll get to see some new and amazing again. Tai chuckled and nodded. I'm counting on it. In fact, I can't wait to see what comes out of the cross. Let go, Matt. Let's show Thalia that we deserve our spot at Harry's side. Suddenly, Matt and Tai's smartphones vibrated as both Blitzgraymon and Kresgaruruman exploded in golden digital energy. Tai smiled and then loudly yelled, "It's time for Jagras Digivolution." Kurogano. Chapter 216. Play Omniman's birth theme. Kresgaruruman and Blitzgraymon's bodies were engulfed in glowing ethereal light, while Matt and Tai raised their smartphones up at the same time, each one bursting with digital energy. Their vital bracelets then exploded with an orange and blue digital energy as they began to shake with an unknown force. Matt and Tai then suddenly began to slowly float up and away from their Digimon partners. Kresgaruruman and Blitzgraymon soon became two golden orbs of digital energy and flew right into Matt and Tai's chests. Both DG destined then roared as their own digital energy burst out of them and rose into the sky. Their Digimon partners in their digital orb forms burst out of their chests and then flew up into the sky. They began to twirl along each other as they glowed in a bright golden, orange, and blue light. Suddenly, Kresgeruruman's and Blitzgremon's voices loudly echoed throughout the area as they called out their Jagras Digivolution to the world. Blitzgremon Jagras Digivolve 2. Kresgeruruman Jagras Digivolve 2. Both orbs of orange, blue, and golden digital energy spun around each other at high speed, until they suddenly collided against each other, causing a shockwave of digital energy to explode outwards. Thalia, in her dragon form, grunted in surprise and had to look away to protect her eyesight, while still charging her attack. Meanwhile, a new and powerful voice called out from within the explosion of digital energy, a voice that caused an excited grin to appear on Tai and Matt's faces: Omniman Alter S. A new form of Omniman, one called Omniman Alter S, emerged from the explosion of digital energy and stood tall in the sky. The Digimon Holy Knight looked up at Thalia and then waved an arm, dispersing the leftover digital energy around him into golden specks of dust. Meanwhile, both Matt and Tai landed on Omniman Alter S's shoulders and stood there while holding their still glowing smartphones. Both DG Destined and Omniman Alter S stared towards Thalia, who narrowed her eyes at the new Mega Level Holy Knight Digimon in a challenge. Harry grinned as he stared at the new form of Omniman. Once again, his friends had managed to surprise him by discovering something he had never seen before, something both amazing and new, a new Digimon Digivolution of a well-known old friend of theirs, Omniman Alter S, a new form of Omniman. Hey! Today is just full of surprises. Yasaka smiled at Harry. Right now, at this very moment, she couldn't help but love the expression on Harry's face, an expression full of cheerfulness and excitement. It sort of made him look younger than he was at this very moment, and for Yasaka, that expression looked very adorable on him. I take it that you didn't know about this Omniman's form. Harry smiled and nodded. No, I had no idea there was another form of Omniman. I have seen some others, even a dark version of him, but not this one in particular. Sirafal was awed at Omniman Alter S and then grinned as she looked at what can only be described as an enhanced and improved version of Omniman. Whoa! Look at that! Omniman already looked badass as it is, but this new form makes him look even more amazing. Eri clapped and laughed in excitement as she stared at the new Mega-level Digimon. She quickly used her smartphone to scan Omniman Alter S and find out more about him. This is so cool! I got to see all kinds of Digivolutions today. New Digimon! And even a new Omniman. Eri's smartphone soon scanned Omniman Alter S and then gave out all of the information it could gather from its data. Omniman Alter S is a Holy Knight Digimon. It is a new face of Omniman that was born from the fusion of the Wargreymon subspecies, Blitzgremon, and the Metalgeruruman subspecies, Kresgeruruman. Although it is a different individual from the Omniman belonging to the Royal Knights, its multi-type performance, which combines the special qualities of the two, hasn't changed, and its strength is also on par with it. It is a mystery how the two Digimon came to fuse together, and whether this Omniman is also due to someone's powerful will or a fusion that exists solely due to some sort of wish is unclear. Omniman Alter S resembles an enhanced version of Omniman. It has red horns and wears multiple belts on its chest, and its cape is now black and grey. Its pauldrons are larger and have golden spikes. Its left hand ends with a Blitzgreymon head with a large gold front horn, while its right hand is a Kresgeruruman head. It has a rhombus red gem with a golden frame on its chest. It also has a golden spike on each side on the waist and a gold spike on each knee. It carries the Garuru sword on its right arm, and the grey cannon on its left arm. This is an inversion from the grey sword and Garuru cannon of other Omniman variants. Eri looked even more excited and interested after listening to all the information she got on Omniman Alter S. Whoa! It's like a reverse version of Omniman. Harry nodded, having heard the information as well, which made him realize the same thing as Eri. Yes, instead of Wargreymon being the sword and Metalgeruruman being the cannon, Blitzgreymon is the cannon and Kresgeruruman is the sword. The roles have been reversed and thus, their abilities and power have changed as well. Play Digimon Ghost Game, Mockquake. Thalia growled and then whipped her head towards Omniman Alter S while roaring the name of her next attack, Thunder Cannon. The massive amount of blue lightning charged inside Thalia's massive jaws coalesced into a giant orb of blue plasma that spun on itself, letting off a loud buzzing sound. The orb then suddenly shot forward with a loud and thunderous cannon blast that released a massive shockwave that shook everything around Thalia. Omniman calmly stared at the attack and narrowed his eyes at the blue plasma orb coming his way. Matt's smartphone began to brightly pulsate with blue digital energy, as the DG Destined of Friendship loudly called out to Omniman Alter S, "Cut it apart." Omniman Alter S raised the arm with Kresgeruruman's head on it, and a sword suddenly sprung out from the mouth on Kresgeruruman's head and Omniman raised it above his head, Garuruzoid. The Garuru sword began to glow and let out a massive amount of blue digital energy. Omniman Alteress then suddenly swung the sword down towards the giant orb of blue plasma and to Thalia's surprise, cut it in half. Both parts of her attack flew past Omniman Alteress's sides and kept going until they crashed against the ground below them and violently exploded, creating two massive explosions and blue lighting maelstroms. The rest of the DG Destined grunted or squealed in surprise as the massive shockwaves created by Thalia's charged blue orb lighting attack shook the very ground, while Percy looked amazed at what Omniman Alteress was able to do. Holy crap, he cut it in half. That attack is on par to a Big Bang attack by Morgan. Bianca suddenly woke up, sat up, and wildly began looking around in surprise. What was that? That was too loud. Suddenly, Thalia roared and launched herself towards Omniman Alteress. Bianca looked up and sweat dropped upon seeing Thalia's dragon form. Did she transform? But why? This is just a spar. Percy shrugged and shook his head. Who knows? You know how Thalia is when she fights, she's as bad as Morgan when it comes to battle, both get kind of wild and savage. Bianca nodded and then began to get up, though she grunted in pain and then huffed feeling completely exhausted. Everything hurts. Percy chuckled and nodded. I bet, you overused your divinity and your domain, I'm surprised you were able to get up right now. Bianca shakily stood up straight and then walked up to Percy's side. I kinda wish I didn't wake up, but who can sleep with this racket on anyways? But who's winning anyway? Percy shrugged. Both Ty and Matt have been able to get Thalia pretty good, but when she took on her dragon form, they were pushed back, but both were able to unlock new Digivolution for their Digimon because of that, and now, she's the one being pushed back. Bianca sighed and shook her head feeling a bit frustrated and completely exasperated. That's pretty bullshit, what sort of shonen protagonist's crap is this? Percy chuckled in amusement at Bianca's comment. Honestly, his cousin/sister, has been reading too much manga and anime lately, something she thinks, no one has noticed yet, but the entire family pretty much knows, that she's getting pretty into this sort of media, something their moms Sirafal and Gabriel seems to be very happy about. Both were already planning to have Bianca cosplay with her in a couple of upcoming anime conventions, something Bianca doesn't know yet. He was pretty excited to see her reaction when she did find out though. Ty narrowed his eyes as he watched Thalia roar and launch herself at them. His smartphone then began to glow brightly as he pointed towards her and then smirked. Shoot her down, Omniman Alteress. Omniman raised his other arm and aimed at Thalia with his Blitzgreymon's head hand. A revolver-like cannon sprung out of the Blitzgreymon's mouth as Omniman Alteress loudly called out his next attack, Transcended Cannon. Massive red rebs of plasma shot out of Blitzgreymon's cannon and raced forward towards Thalia at an incredible speed, becoming red glowing streaks cutting through the sky. Thalia, seeing the attack coming, immediately covered her body with her wings, just in time as the red orbs of plasma crashed against her and continuously exploded against her wing-covered body. But Thalia found herself, once again, unable to absorb the plasma in Omniman Alteress's attack. It was too fast and exploded too quickly for her to be able to process that much power. Still, her dragon form somewhat protected her from the worst of the damage. Though she still felt it and knew that the situation was looking pretty dire now, she however, hanged on and flew out of the explosions engulfing her. She then immediately began to spin at high speed, becoming a giant drill of blue lighting as she flew towards her opponent. Omniman Alteress quickly moved out of the way, but Thalia immediately turned around in midair and shot herself towards Omniman Alteress again. Both Ty and Matt grunted in annoyance at the persistent attack. Both then raised their smartphones, which began to vibrate and glow. Suddenly, Omniman Alteress Blitzgreymon's head transformed into Wargreymon's head and the transcended sword sprung out. Omniman Alteress then launched himself forward and swung both, the transcended sword and Garuru sword in a cross-slash at the incoming Thalia. The spinning blue lightning drill crashed against the cross-slash, releasing an enormous shockwave that shook everything around the fighting duo and cratered the ground below Thalia and Omniman Alteress. Davis looked up towards the sky and smugly smiled as he watched Omniman Alteress hold Thalia's attack back. Look guys! Omniman is dual-wielding. Cody looked on in interest. Being a kendo practitioner, allowed him to know and understand the difficulty that comes from wielding two swords. In honesty, he had no idea how Harry could do it so effortlessly. Remarkable. Omniman was already powerful enough with one sword, but with two? It's just like Harry when he uses both of his keyblades. Ken nodded and smiled. Both Ty and Matt seemed to be in complete sync with Omniman too. I wonder if Davis and I can do that too? Maybe even have Imperial Drummond taken his paladin form again. Yoli excitedly smiled. Oh. That's right. Imperial Drummond has a alter form too. I completely forgot that. Davis grinned and gave everyone a nod. Well, looks like we're going to have to practice and train with these new abilities hard. We can't let our senpai get too ahead of us after all. The second generation of the DG Destined all nodded in agreement. Behind him, the vanishing remains of the shadow creatures they had defeated began to let off sparks of darkness as their Digimon looked up towards the battle and awed at Omniman Alter's power. Omniman Alter's grunted and then pushed his cross-slash forward with all his strength. Thalia was forced to stop and was then harshly pushed back. Thalia growled in pain and frustration but still lashed out with her tail hoping to get a hit. Omniman Alter's, however, just leaned to the side and allowed Thalia's tail to sail past him. Matt smirked and then pointed at Thalia with his hand. Come on, Omniman Alter's. Omniman Alter's raised his Kresgaruruman's hand and pointed it at Thalia. His Kresgaruruman head hand glowed with blue digital energy, transforming into a metal Garuruman's head in a matter of seconds. Supreme Cannon. The metal Garuruman head opened its jaws and then a massive cannon sprung from its mouth. Soon after, it quickly charged an enormous amount of digital energy and then Omniman Alter's let it loose towards Thalia. A massive orb of blue digital energy sailed through the air and crashed against Thalia's abdomen. A loud explosion went off and Thalia found her body being encased in ice. She panicked, feeling her body's temperature drop fast, but she didn't get to do or say anything. Omniman Alter's didn't let her. He immediately raised his Wargreymon head hand and then swung down his grey sword towards the now cold and frozen Thalia. Transcendent Sword. Omniman Alter's rushed forwards in a blink of an eye, so fast in fact, that Thalia flinched back when the Holy Knight Digimon blurred in front of her, though. A roar of pain escaped her when Omniman slashed her chest open with his grey sword. Being frozen by Omniman Alter's Supreme Cannon didn't allow her to do anything to defend herself, and thus, she received the full brunt of Omniman Alter's attack. Her chest splattered blood everywhere, and soon after she dropped to the ground while still roaring in pain. Thalia soon crashed against the ground with a loud thud and a crash, and the ground crater underneath her, but, even though she was hurting and very tired, the demi-goddess quickly rolled to her feet and roared in both anger and pain, unable to fly now that her body was both too cold and hurt. Her injuries and the spreading ice on her body robbed her of the use of her wings, but she was still a dragon and she wasn't about to go down without a fight, so, Thalia called upon her godly domain. Originally, she had inherited a domain over thunder and lightning from Zeus, but when Harry adopted her and made her into a demi-goddess Dragonoid, her domain evolved into one of storms and death. This manifested in a new type of lightning, divine black lightning, something that made Harry grin like a loon, something about giving the middle finger to the rakeage or something like that. No one really understood what he was referring to. Thalia didn't really understand or care about that though. She just loved the fact that everything she got from Zeus was practically gone and replaced by something unique and related to her pops. She might not say it, or even hint at it, but Thalia loves Harry and all her siblings very much. Everything Harry stands for are things she really could get behind, and because of that, Thalia had wanted to be like Harry, from the way he cares and loves his family, to the way he deals with enemies. Everything that Harry is and does is an example to Thalia, and when her new divine domains evolved into storms and death, she was elated. She had Harry train her and teach her all kinds of spells and techniques that had to do with lightning and death. She even had Bianca give her tips on how to harness a domain connected to death. So, when Thalia called forth her domain, the blue lightning around her dragon form suddenly shifted to a pitch black lightning, so black in fact, that it had a white outline. Omniman Alter's, Matt, and Tai widened their eyes in both surprise and worry. All three watched as everything around Thalia was being disintegrated by her now pitch black lightning. Thalia suddenly looked up and opened her jaws wide open, which alerted Tai, Matt, and Omniman Alter's of her counterattack. However, all three of them weren't expecting the speed at which Thalia attacked them, for Omniman Alter's only had time to cover himself with his cape before he was engulfed in a massive beam of pitch black lightning. Thalia tried to keep the attack going, hoping to defeat Omniman Alter's. She knew exactly how powerful the Holy Digimon Knight was. He might not be the one that belonged to her pops, but that didn't mean that this Omniman was any weaker. In fact, the new form this Omniman unlocked made it extremely powerful. But Thalia was exhausted, injured, and pretty much done, so her final attack soon lost strength and then finally stopped. Thalia huffed in pain and exhaustion, but looked up to see if Omniman Alter's was still standing. To her surprise, Omniman Alter's soon uncovered his body from his cape and revealed that he was undamaged, though both Tai and Matt were now kneeling on his shoulders and huffing for air. Both of their smartphones and vital bracelets were violently glowing and vibrating. Thalia grinned. She knew that both Tai and Matt raised a barrier around Omniman Alter's. That was the only reason they came unscathed from her final attack, and it seemed that both used up a lot of energy and were hit by the backlash of using their barriers. A fact proven right when both Ty and Matt suddenly coughed up some blood. However, both the DG destined of friendship and courage, refused to drop. Both might be kneeling and in pain, but they still looked strong and ready to keep going. A will and strength born from all the battles they had endured, all the experiences and everything they had gone through. So Thalia sighed and then closed her eyes. She let her exhaustion and injuries take her down. She had seen what she wanted already and didn't need to keep fighting. Still, as darkness overtook her, she couldn't help but feel happy and content. This was a very fun fight and she was actually able to fight on even terms. She only lost to experience and the DG Destins will, and she could accept defeat for that. With that last thought going through her mind, Thalia passed out and dropped to the ground defeated. Matt and Ty both sighed in relief. Both were tired and sore, and they were sure they had broken something as well. This was a very tough fight and they barely earned their victory. Still, both DG Destined turned to look at each other and grinned. Meanwhile, Omniman Alteress sighed as well and then began to float down to where the rest of the DG Destined were waiting for them. However, Thalia's dragon form suddenly began to glow and shrink, until the light dissipated and Thalia turned back into her human form. However, when Matt and Ty saw her, both couldn't help but blush and sweat drop. Omniman turned to look at Thalia and chuckled in amusement. Poor Thalia, she had ended up buck naked and with her ass up on the air. Seems like she had fallen unconscious in a very awkward position and Omniman Alteress found that a bit funny. Harry's sweat dropped upon seeing how his daughter ended up falling unconscious. Ari and Lily were giggling while Sherry awkwardly laughed. She looked like she didn't know how she should react to this. Sirafal grinned and took out her smartphone. Well, that looks like blackmail material. Better go save it for later. With that said, Sirafal took off flying with a very excited smile on her face, all the while Yasaka deadpanned at her as she watched the Mua fly away. I feel so sorry for Thalia now, she's never going to live this down. Harry nodded. Yeah, better go there and make sure Sirafal doesn't take a picture, maybe dress Thalia as well. With that decided, Harry took off flying at high speed to try to prevent Sirafal from having powerful blackmail material from Thalia. Besides, he quite didn't like the idea of his daughter's ass being out on the open like that either. After convincing Sirafal not to take pictures of Thalia's buck-naked butt and healing everyone, they all gathered inside Ria's kitchen and were now eating some well-deserved cake, or at least, that's what Ria had told the DG Destined and everyone else. Despite the demigods having lost the intense spar, they weren't mad or disappointed. Instead, they were motivated to train and get even stronger. They understood that the DG Destined had a lot of experience fighting beings on power levels beyond the norm, some with some very odd and powerful abilities as well. Still, to the DG Destined, this spar wasn't a clean win nor was it easy. In fact, the battle was one of the hardest fights that the DG Destined ever had. It showed them that they still needed to get stronger. Especially when Thalia, Percy, and Bianca told them that they were the weakest of Harry's children, a fact that they were aware of, but the fact itself never really cemented in their minds. They've seen some of what Harry is capable of. But given how tough the fight against the demigods was, they couldn't even fathom just how much stronger Harry was. Either way, this spar made the DG Destined realize that they better get to work and get stronger, as no one wanted to be left behind after all or be a weak link. Harry sipped some of his tea and smiled as he watched the DG Destined make fun of Percy's embarrassing defeat under Rosamund's boot, and of Thalia's wardrobe malfunction. Both Percy and Thalia were blushing crimson red as everyone joked around and had a laugh. Bianca just giggled and shook her head. Honestly, to think Percy had that kind of kink, and Thalia. You need to practice with your dragon form. You don't want to keep giving the boys a show, right? Thalia groaned as she blushed and then slammed her head on the table. Ugh. Come on. I just forgot that my clothes got destroyed when I took my dragon form. TK leaned over to Matt and Ty and whispered to them, so, how was it? Matt blushed but closed his eyes and refused to answer. He knew better than to step on that landmine. Ty however turned his eye to the side and whispered, it was a very nice butt. Thalia blushed since she was able to hear Ty and then narrowed her eyes at both TK and him. I can hear you. Harry nodded, and then looked over to TK and Ty. So can we not speak about my daughter's butt? At least not in front of me, assholes. TK and Ty nervously chuckled and sweat dropped upon seeing Harry's deadpan and hearing his dry voice. Matt sighed and shook his head. Idiots. Sirafal giggled and then grinned. Ooh. Looks like you have a fan, Thalia. Give him another peek and maybe he'll fall head over heels for you. Poor Thalia just groaned and ignored her mother. Bianca laughed and shook her. Stop being a pervert, mom, and let's leave Thalia's very nice butt alone, okay? Thalia just gave Bianca the finger while still having her face on the table. Sirafal looked like she was enjoying herself a lot. Being a mom had its perks and she was loving every bit of it. Yasaka giggled and then spoke up. Anyways, that was a very impressive battle everyone. It also seems like all of you discovered new things about yourselves as well. Carrie nodded and then raised her hand. Her hand was then suddenly engulfed in a pink burst of digital energy. Yes, it's odd. I can completely manipulate my digital energy now, though I still need to focus a lot to do so. But it's like I have always known that I could do so, like my body and mind just knew what to do with my digital energy and what I could actually use it for. The DG Destined nodded in understanding and agreement. Tai then raised his hand as well and stared at it. Yeah, it was instinctual, though, it did have quite the backslash as well. Everyone winced when Tai said that. After all, when Harry healed him, he told him that he had completely shattered the bones of his hand and arm. In fact, they were almost turned into powder. The only reason he didn't pass out or even feel the pain was because of the adrenaline from the fight. Harry put his cup down and then spoke up. You did use a mega-level attack, Tai. It's common sense that your body wasn't ready to handle such an attack. In fact, you're lucky you didn't blast your arm off. Tai's sweat dropped and gulped. He had to admit that using Wargreymond's Terra Force was a hasty idea, but he didn't know just how hasty the idea was until Harry explained it now. Harry smiled and then continued to speak. But it worked. That counts for something. But for now, don't try that again. Start with small attacks, like Pepper Breath or even Nova Blast, but beyond champion level attack, you run the risk of hurting yourself, at least until you get stronger, that is. Tai nodded. Carrie then smiled and spoke up. Do you think that if I get stronger, I'll be able to create even stronger barriers? Harry nodded. Of course, you will also be able to handle the backlash better. Carrie smiled, feeling rather excited and happy. She really liked the ability to be able to protect everyone and was looking forward to getting powerful enough to be able to do so with ease. Davis grinned and then excitedly spoke up. I can't wait to be able to throw Digimon attacks or even discover new Digivolutions. Ken nodded in agreement to Davis's idea. We also have to try more Digig combinations. Flame Usedman was a very powerful DG armor Digivolution. Yoliai clapped in excitement and then fist pumped. Yeah. Ooh, I can't wait to see what Hawkman digivolves into with all the other DG eggs. Harry chuckled at the second generation of the DG Destined and their excitement. Still, he had something to tell them, so he spoke up. First, you should look for the Digig of Kindness, to complete the set. All of the DG Destined turned their heads towards Harry and gaped at him. It seemed like they weren't aware that there was a Digig of Kindness. Still, Harry smiled at them in amusement and pride. They had fought hard and won, and now they were getting along with everyone, and soon they would adapt and get used to life in Neo Kyoto. The old dragon god was very excited to see what changes the DG Destined would bring to Neo Kyoto. Just how much will things change once again in his home and city? The thought alone made Harry smile, and as he began to explain about the Digig of Kindness, he couldn't help but look forward to the future. Kurogano. Chapter 217. 6 months later. On this particular morning, Harry was working in his office room on his laptop. As the guild master of the Digimon Tamers Guild, he had quite a few things to take care of, things like budgeting, organizing, and even roster information. In all honesty, it is quite a bit of work, but Harry is not one to complain and mind such a thing, much anyways. Months have passed by since the DG Destined arrived in Neo Kyoto and the opening of the Digimon Tamers Guild. Quite a few things have changed since then, and as Harry typed on his laptop while sitting on his office room's couch, he began to think back on this new changes in Neo Kyoto. Among one of the biggest changes, was the addition to most of the DG Destined from around the world, DG Destined that he had met during Apocalymon's attempt to destroy the digital world and the real world. After the DG Destined finished eating their food and snacks after the harsh spar they had against Percy, Bianca, and Thalia, they went back to their world and began to quickly spread the word amongst the DG Destined from around the world. It didn't take long for many of these international DG Destined to answer the call, all excited and quite happy about the Digimon Tamers Guild's creation. As DG Destined from all over the world, they often had to deal with Digimon-related problems by themselves. It was risky and quite difficult for them to actually do something about any issues brought about by the digital world and wild Digimon. More often than not, they had wished that they had some sort of backup, or at least, to have someone to advise them or give them some sort of help or guidance. But given that the DG Destined were scattered around the world and some in very distant places, it was quite difficult for them to actually get in contact with anyone, much less the more active Japanese groups. Izzy had helped as much as possible, but even the DG Destined of knowledge could only do so much to help. But all of that changed with the creation of the Digimon Tamers Guild. Communication was no longer an issue, nor was the spread of useful information available at all times for any DG destined to use and browse. They all now had a place to gather, talk, and help each other, one made available to them by Harry, using the DG destined Digivices and connecting them to the digital plane where the portal to Neo Kyoto is. The DG destined from around the world could now easily gather and help each other thanks to that. Access to the guild also granted them boons and even pay, which was always welcomed by the young DG destined. Taking care of a Digimon is very expensive after all, especially with how much they eat, and some DG destined weren't as well off as others in this regard. With the guild's pay and what they make from dungeon crawling, they can now take care of their Digimon partners' needs with ease. Also, as soon as the DG destined from around the world learned about the Neo Kyoto smartphones, the time limit on their Digivices and the fact that they're now known as digital life forms pushed them to begin training and dungeon crawling in earnest. All the DG destined took their training seriously and worked hard these past few days, to not only get the materials for their smartphones but to also learn and control their new budding powers as digital life forms. It really made Harry very happy to see everyone giving their all to grow and get stronger. As Harry thought about this, he looked down and smiled as he began to rub the head of none other than Mako, who was, at this very moment, peacefully sleeping on Harry's lap. Mako had been training extra hard from the very beginning. She even asked Harry for personal training after the usual and normal training time everyone had. At first, Harry didn't understand why Mako was pushing herself so hard, but she explained herself quite clearly when Harry asked her about this. Mako didn't want to be left behind by her friends and fellow DG destined. She wanted to be strong enough to stand beside them, and Harry, the dragon god, was a bit surprised that Mako was feeling left behind by everyone else. But he could understand her wish to be strong to not only fight but to protect her friends. He was also very flattered that she wanted to be strong enough to be able to stand by his side. She didn't need to do that, of course. Harry would have accepted her no matter how strong or weak she was. But she herself didn't want to be a burden or a liability, so she sought strength, and Harry was more than happy to help her, though poor Mako often ended up exhausted and falling asleep after her personal training with Harry. Just like she was doing right now. Not that Harry minded, he was more than happy to let her sleep and rest on his lap, especially with how hard she trained. With that last thought in his mind, Harry went back to work while thinking some more about what has been happening in Neo Kyoto lately. Another one of the major changes in Neo Kyoto brought about by the creation of the Digimon Tamers Guild, was the fact that Digimon began to become quite common in Neo Kyoto. Digimon were already quite popular and respected among the citizens of Neo Kyoto, thanks to Ophanimon, Seraphimon, Cherubimon and the Digimon Royal Holy Knights. The three celestial Digimon were well respected because they ran the Neo Kyoto Healing Temple, and the Digimon Royal Holy Knights because they protect Neo Kyoto. So when a guild was created that allowed its members to gain a Digimon partner, many immediately joined and began to act as members of the Digimon Tamers Guild. This, of course, increased the work Izzy, Harry, and Tony had to do for the guild. Izzy didn't mind much, but both Harry and Tony cursed out quite often because of the increase in work. But it was worth it to be able to see Neo Kyoto filled with all sorts of Digimon roaming around. Luckily for them and everyone else, Friday and Jarvis took it upon themselves to assist and help with the workload, but as guild masters, Harry and Tony did have to work and make sure everything ran smoothly in the guild. For the most part, no big issues arose. The only one that was the most urgent was the fact that materials to make Neo Kyoko smartphones were hard to both find and get. Most were rare drops from defeated bosses in the natural dungeon, while other materials were found in some of the deepest floors in the dungeon as well. Most of the DG destined weren't as experienced nor strong as Ty and Davis's groups. So many couldn't exactly get the needed materials to get smartphones. Thankfully, the Potter household came to the rescue, and many members of the household took it upon themselves to actually help the DG destined get the needed materials for their smartphones. This led to most of the DG destined acquiring a smartphone and gaining access to all their functions, which were very well accepted and liked among the young DG destined. Besides that, the original DG destined and their second generation have now adapted and become full-on members of Neo Kyoto. Their families even moved to Harry's world in an effort to allow their children to have the best opportunities that Neo Kyoto could offer. The fact that they would get to live near Harry was just the icing on the cake. Harry and the Potter household helped them all settle down in Neo Kyoto, and Yasaka made sure all the DG destined's parents had the best jobs or positions among the Neo Kyoto workforce. Something Harry had asked her to make sure happened. The DG destined also transferred schools to Kyoha Academy, all to stay close to Harry and his family, though Harry did make sure to let the devils know that his friends were off limits and not be involved in the supernatural side of Kyoha, especially the three Judeo-Christian factions. Something Rias and Sana agreed with right away, Sana because Harry is family, and Rias because she didn't want to once again get on Harry's bad side, a smart decision on her part. Now, the DG destined live in the Potter household and had immediately adapted to the chaotic nature of everyone living there, though they were still surprised to find power UPS, weapons, and even ammo all over the house. Still, the DG destined loved the Potter household and the fun and chaotic happenings that often occur there. As for the Potter family, well, they have pretty much accepted the DG destined as family. Tai has been a very active member of the guild, often going inside the natural dungeon after school with a Guman to get materials and train. He still plays soccer, but that sort of became more of a hobby than his actual passion. Now, he wants to be a good example to the other DG destined from around the world and help as much as he can. He can also be often found with Thalia, Bianca, Percy, and Nico, either training or just hanging out. Matt became interested in Neo Kyoto's plans to build a base on the moon, along with the creation of a space fleet. He and Gabuman have been speaking with Kahaku, who has taken them under his wing to teach them all he knows about military space travel. Sora meets and hangs out with the Dryads, Hestia, Rhea, and even Hera very often. These nature spirits and goddesses have been teaching her everything they know about flower arranging, something that Sora has been taking rather seriously. Besides that, she has become interested in senjutsu training, after meeting Himawari and her commenting and explaining about how Harry and her father Naruto are sages when Sora visited the Uzumaki household to meet Hinata and get some lessons from her about flower arranging. She began training under Ma and Pa, the Toad sages, and Harry is just waiting for her to succeed. Mimi often speaks with all sorts of beings in Neo Kyoto and asks about both their culture and fashion. It has broadened her view of clothes designing, and she has been on a roll coming up with future clotheslines, not only for humans but for aliens and supernatural beings as well. The DG destined of sincerity has also become well liked by everyone, to the point that everyone greets her with a wave and a smile. On her part, Mimi has been having the time of her life. It didn't come as a surprise to anyone, they all knew that Mimi is a social butterfly, speaking and meeting new people was her element and she thrived in it. Lately, she's been going to all the worlds connected to Neo Kyoto, to both meet the people and looks for more fashion ideas. Joe has joined the Kua Healing Temple and is being taught about everything having to do with medical practices by Tsunade herself. Apparently, Joe reminds her of Shizune when she was a young and nervous girl back when she was beginning to teach her. Joe has begun to thrive under Tsunade's tutelage and has been learning all about non-supernatural medical practices. He also gets help from Asia and Gabriel, who have also taken it upon themselves to make sure Joe knows everything he can. Izzy, as the most active member of the DG destined in the guild, has been busy like Harry and Tony, though he takes care of everything that has to do with spreading the information about the guild in his world, bringing new DG destined to Neo Kyoto and help any that need assistance with anything related to Digimon. But Izzy doesn't seem to mind being so busy, nor does he seem like it's affecting him as much as it does Tony and Harry. In fact, he seems to be having fun, too much in fact. Carrie helps the younger members of the DG destined that join the guild. More and more DG destined are being discovered, some of the age of 10 or even 6, so she takes care of them and teaches them how to care for their Digimon partners, who are more often than not, baby-level Digimon. Everyone was very glad that Carrie was helping with this. She was well suited for this with her kind, soft, and gentle demeanor. It helped the younger DG destined calm down and feel comfortable with everything in Neo Kyoto and the guild. Carrie herself seemed quite happy being able to help the young DG destined as well. TK is still quite the flirt, which, to the surprise of everyone in the group, has become very popular among the yokai females of Neo Kyoto. However, because he's being constantly watched by the girls, he hasn't been able to do anything but go on a few dates. Though Harry believes that eventually, when TK becomes older, he might just have a harem for himself, given how yokai aren't that concerned with human morality. The poor guy has no idea the sort of hell he's walking to. Davis, like Tai, has been very active in the guild. He and Veman go inside the dungeon to fight, train, and loot, though they also spend a lot of time visiting the local ramen shops. He still dreams of opening his own ramen shop someday, so he wants to learn more about them. His favorite, and to no one's surprise, is Ichiraku Ramen. Naruto once took him there when they met, and Davis has been hooked ever since. Harry even heard that he asked Ayam to become her apprentice, shocking the poor woman quite a bit. It still makes Harry chuckle whenever he thinks about that. Ken has been active in the guild as well, but has taken it upon himself to act as a guide to new members of the guild and teach them the ropes, something Harry, Tony, and Izzy are very thankful for. As guild masters, it was their job to teach, guide, and help new members, but they're usually too busy to do so, and Ken takes that weight off them. so it works out for everyone. Cody has been training in Kendo with many of the sword masters of Neo-Kyoto and even Konoha. He wishes to expand his skills and knowledge of the sword, and sparring and training with many sword wielders will help him do so. Though he loses more often than not, he still takes it as a learning experience, something that has earned him the respect of many sword masters in Neo-Kyoto. Yuliai is happily learning everything she can about all the high-level technology available in Neo-Kyoto. Since the city is a hotspot of new technology advances, she wants to learn as much as she can and maybe someday, create something new with what she learned. So far, she has fallen in love with the Omni tool and had Harry buy her one on a date, more like she dragged him to one, but Harry didn't mind. Now she uses it to scan for information and learn about everything around her. She also helps as a secretary to Harry, Izzy, and Tony, cause even with Jarvis and Friday helping them, the amount of things to do is still quite large. She's become quite popular among guild members for her cheerful and friendly demeanor. One last surprise everyone got over the months that had passed, was that Hackman had made it to Neo-Kyoto by following some of the new DG Destined that were coming over to join the Digimon Tamers Guild. Many had wondered how the rookie Digimon had made it past Harry's enchantments and wards over the portals, but the Dragon God was quick to explain, that the reason that Hackman was able to cross over, was because he was both a digital being and because he had no ill intentions. So the wards didn't react to his presence and he was able to cross over to Neo-Kyoto with ease. Hackman was in fact, looking for something to fight and live for. With homeostasis deleted, the young rookie Digimon was lost in what to do next. All of that changed, when Hackman met Sirafal one day, while he was walking around Neo-Kyoto. Sirafal had heard of Hackman through Harry, who explained the kind of Digimon Hackman is and the situation that led him to be used by homeostasis. Sirafal, being the cheerful and kind mood that she is, offered to help Hackman find a new reason to fight and live for, all in exchange for him appearing on her show as a new mysterious superhero that would aid her when things get too dangerous. Hackman agreed to help, though he had no idea that he was making a deal with a literal devil, which resulted in him debuting in the most recent Magical Leviathan movie, where both Thalia and Bianca also debuted as villains and main bad guys of the movie. The movie became a hit. After all, it had an epic final battle between a lightning dragon god, a shadow user, a holy Digimon royal knight, and Sirafal. There was no need for special effects or whatnot, since all four actors got way into their roles and began to use real techniques and spells. Harry had to make an appearance during filming to protect the crew and to raise a barrier around the battlefield, but in the end, the movie became a blockbuster and was very popular among children. This of course made Hackman very happy. Something about inspiring children and making them smile resonated with him, so he decided to continue to work with Sirafal and now appears on her show often as the second protagonist. But overall, everyone was already getting used to living in and how Neo-Kyoto works. It certainly made Harry very happy that everyone was finding their way in their new home and among all the beings that live in Neo-Kyoto. That was the last thought that ran through Harry's mind, when his office door was suddenly opened. Sora, Carrie, Yuliai, and Mimi stepped inside and seemed to be looking for something, but Harry pushed that aside and saved his progress on his work, on his laptop and greeted the girls. "Hello everyone, what's up?" The DG Destined girls smiled at Harry and watched him as he sat back on the couch he was working on. Sora then decided to speak up. "Hello Harry, have you seen Mako? We were supposed to meet right now and go shopping, but no one knows where she is." Harry chuckled and then pushed his laptop aside, allowing everyone to see Mako sleeping on his lap quite peacefully. She was even drooling a bit. The DG Destined girls glared at Mako, and even their eyes twitched in annoyance upon seeing her being so comfortable. Mimi suddenly sighed and shook her head. "Out of everyone here, Mako was not the one I would have thought to be this sneaky." Carrie nodded and sighed as well. "Yeah, she's very shrewd when it comes to Harry. I feel like we're always a step behind her." Yuliai crossed her arms and glared at Mako. "The fact that she does it so innocently annoys me. I can't even be mad at her." Sora sighed and rubbed her forehead. "Whatever, let's just give her this win. We're late as is, so I'm going to wake her up now." Everyone nodded, while Harry began to sweat when he noticed Sora's overly sweet smile as she approached him and Mako. Before he could even say or do anything, Sora had already walked over and reached over to Mako. A second later, she pinched the DG Destined of Bond's cheeks and pulled, causing the poor girl to yelp and abruptly wake up. "Owie!" Harry winced, caused that really looked painful, but he knew better than to say anything right now, so he silently watched as Sora let go of Mako's cheeks and then smiled at her. "Wake up Mako, it's time to go shopping." Poor Mako yelped in fright the moment she heard Sora's cold voice. She then got up and bowed in apology. "Ah. Sorry. I was so tired from training I must have fallen asleep, though I was very comfortable. Mako's nonchalant attitude towards her closeness to Harry, caused the DG destined girl's eyes to twitch in annoyance once again. Mimi suddenly walked over to Mako and then began to push her forward from behind. Come on, you already got ahead of us with Harry, no need to rub it in. Mako looked confused but just let herself be pushed, though she did wave goodbye to Harry before she was taken out of his office. Harry just chuckled and waved at everyone as they left to go shopping. With Mako now gone, Harry decided to finish for the day and go home, so he turned off his laptop, closed it, and then got off the couch. The dragon god then stretched and sighed in relief as his bones popped. With that done, Harry then turned around and opened a dark corridor with a lazy wave of his hand. Without wasting any more time, he then stepped over the dark corridor and then through it. Soon after, the dark corridor dissipated, leaving Harry's office in silence and peace. Harry soon stepped out of the dark corridor into the living room of his home, though he was surprised to see that he had visitors, some whom he wasn't expecting, but that he didn't mind either. With that in mind, Harry smiled and waved at his visitors, who smiled and waved back at him when they saw him arrive via dark corridor. The dragon god then walked over and decided to greet his friends. Rukia, Renji, long time no see guys. Rukia smiled at her friend, while Renji grinned at Harry in response to his greeting. Harry then turned his head towards the one entertaining Rukia and Renji. Yasaka, looks like you've been busy. Yasaka, who had been drinking some tea, smiled and nodded to her boyfriend. Well, they came looking for you earlier in the day, but since I know that you've been busy, I have been keeping them company while you arrived. Harry smiled and leaned down. He then gave Yasaka a quick kiss. Thank you Yasaka. Yasaka just softly smiled at Harry, while the dragon god then took a seat beside her and spoke to his friends. All right, I'm home now, so what's up guys? I take it that you didn't come for a casual visit. Rukia grinned and then began to explain. Well, it's a little bit of both. We didn't get to talk much when Ichigo regained his powers, so we do need to catch up, but we do have official business as well. Renji nodded and crossed his arms. We were curious about your home world and Ichigo has been telling us all kinds of things as well, so everyone in Soul Society has been very curious as well. Harry hummed and thought in silence for a while. As the Master of Death, Harry isn't really fond of Soul Society. In his opinion, the place is a mockery of what the afterlife is. After all, Harry has seen Death's domain, where she keeps all souls so they can rest and be happy for eternity, so something as archaic and presumptuous as Soul Society is, has always bothered him to no end. Back when he had first entered where all Shinigami come from, he had been constantly rejected by the domain too. At the time he had no clue as to why and how that was happening. At first, he believed it was because he was weakened, but now? He believes that something else was rejecting him, but he hadn't had the chance to revisit Soul Society again, so he hadn't had the time to go test and really find out what exactly was rejecting his presence there. After all, he is the Master of Death, there was no way a place associated with death would reject him like that. It had really made things very difficult for him back then. The constant rejecting of his nature as the Master of Death had caused him to be further weakened. Much more than what he was already dealing with, otherwise, Aizen wouldn't have been able to escape Soul Society back then. This fact pissed off Harry for a very long time now and he hasn't forgotten about it. But despite his dislike of the place, he had made a lot of good friends among the Shinigami, and quite a few rivals as well. Alright, then how about we talk business first and then we can go hang out around Neo Kyoto. Both Rukia and Renji smiled and nodded, both quite liked the idea of getting the serious part of their visit out of the way first, so Rukia then began to speak. Sounds good. Harry smiled and gave a small nod to Rukia, which prompted her to begin explaining. I believe you received a message from the Captain Commander of the Godi I-13, Yamamoto Genri Yusai, about a meeting with you, correct? Harry nodded while Yasaka took a sip of her tea. Yeah, I was told about the old man's request for a meeting. I haven't forgotten, it just that a lot of things fell into my lap and I've been extremely busy. We all are actually. Yasaka put down her teacup and then began to explain a bit. I believe Ichigo has been informing all of you in Soul Society, of the nature of the events that have been keeping us all busy. Rukia nodded, but it was Renji who answered the question in full. Yeah, Strawberry has told us about everything that has been happening here, something about preparing for war and quite a bit of world jumping, right? Harry sighed but nodded. Yeah, it's been quite hectic and everyone in Neo Kyoto has been mobilizing. In fact, we're going to have a big meeting with all the big heads in Neo Kyoto and speak about where we are and what to focus on next. Renji hummed a bit but nodded in understanding. Rukia smiled and then spoke. The captain is aware, Harry, and he understands. Perhaps more than anyone would, but he does want to know if you will come for a visit soon so he can speak to you. It seems like he has something serious to talk to you about. Harry raised an eyebrow at what Rukia just told him. Yamamoto Genri Yusai. Harry has always thought that the old man was an odd guy. Despite being on guard whenever he was around, he still spoke with respect towards Harry, and the dragon god always wondered if it was because he sensed what or who he truly is. The fact that Genri Yusai wants to speak to him makes this even more important. The old man is not one to bother people for nonsense, so something must be going on or happening if he's requesting to speak to him. No doubt he didn't explain much to Renji and Rukia, so asking them about what the old man wanted was a waste of time, so the only way for Harry to find out what's going on is to go to Soul Society once again and speak directly with Genri Yusai. Chapter 218. After Harry heard everything Rukia and Renji had to report about the upcoming meeting between himself and Genri Yusai, both Shinagamis were then escorted by Yasaka to visit Neo Kyoto, while Harry stayed behind to think about the situation. He wasn't kidding when he said that he was busy, so he had pushed back so many things and events that he had pending. Among those were the meeting between himself and the captain of the Godii 13, a meeting between himself and the Phase Queen, Titania, and of course a few other things that have popped up over time. Honestly, he had even forgotten some of these things he needed to be doing, so Harry began to think that perhaps it was time to get some of those things done, especially now and before everyone moved on to the second stages of the many plans he has for Neo Kyoto and preparing for war. As Harry thought over the many things he had to do, a voice suddenly called out to him from nearby, "Geez Harry, you look so serious, did something happen?" Harry looked over to his side and saw none other than Rimuru in his slime form sitting beside him. "Rimuru? Where did you come from? And how long have you been sitting there?" Rimuru tilted his entire body to the side and gave Harry an odd look. "I've been here for a while dude, you must have been thinking really hard if you didn't notice me or even see me." Harry sighed but nodded. "Looks like it. Sorry about that Rimuru, I was just thinking about a few things I have to take care of." Rimuru nodded and then raised a small little limb, which he waddled side to side. "Nah, don't worry about it, being a leader sucks when it keeps you so busy, I know that more than anyone. But forget that. Anything I can help you with? I'm not too busy right now, you know. In fact, I've been world hopping all over the place and having so much fun. So might as well help and be productive for a while." Harry smiled at his friend. "Oh? Going around and sightseeing, hey? Anything interesting?" Rimuru excitedly bounced on the couch a couple of times before telling Harry about his world-hopping trips. Harry smiled as Rimuru told him about how he went to Yoshi Island and rode a blue Yoshi. How he went to the digital world to meet real Digimon. How he helped the Mario brothers clear a few pipes of Koopas and Goombas. Had tea with Princess Peach and Zelda. How he and Link kicked the butt of a mask-wearing Skull Kid. How he visited all the ninja hidden villages and met with all sorts of ninjas. He even found a lab and ended up using his skill Beelzebub to absorb it all when he found out that there were some very dangerous people who had been enhanced and kept asleep in there. Plus he also got to meet all the Baijiu as well. Overall, Rimuru seemed to have been having a lot of fun lately. Then I rode on top of Kurama for a bit. That was cool. Honestly, Kurama wasn't as grumpy as I thought he would be." Harry chuckled and nodded. "Well, he mellowed out a lot after living with Naruto and the Uzumaki for so long. Plus I heard that Himawari hangs out with him a lot now, so he's probably learned to be more patient." Rimuru nodded. He then continued to speak. "The only other place I want to visit next is Soul Society. I want to see a Shinigami, maybe even fight one, and see if I can learn something from them. They do have quite the cool magic system and sword skills." Harry grinned and then decided to explain something to Rimuru about what was happening. "Soul Society, hey? I was actually thinking about it now. Well, about a whole bunch of things actually. But Soul Society is part of that. I have to make a visit there soon, so how about we go together? Who knows, maybe we'll have a cool adventure along the way, just like old times." Rimuru actually wobbled in excitement when Harry mentioned an adventure. He really missed exploring with him, which is something both Rimuru and Harry did often in Tempest. "Oh, that sounds like a ton of fun. But what do you have to go there for? As far as I remember, you're not really fond of the place, right?" Harry nodded. "Yeah, it's usually not a place I would consider visiting much, but I do have friends there that I want to see again, plus, the Captain Commander wants to meet with me and it seems serious." Rimuru wobbled his head body up and down. He was nodding to let Harry know he understood. "The Captain Commander, hey? Isn't that the very powerful and scary grandpa?" Harry raised an eyebrow and nodded. "So this world made it into the media of yours as well, hey?" Rimuru nodded again, yup. Though I've only watched the anime, I did hear the manga got super awesome later, but I didn't want to start to read it yet, so I waited and hoped that it would be made into the anime as well. Harry hummed as he considered what Rimuru just told him for a few seconds. How far did the anime show? Rimuru looked up and seemed to think for a few seconds before answering Harry's question. I think it got as far as Aizen's defeat, and then there was a movie in which Ichigo goes to hell to save his sister, Yuzu, I think. Harry raised an eyebrow at that little bit of information. So we don't know what's happening soon, huh? Rimuru nodded, yeah, though I did hear rumors like Quincy's are going to be involved and some big revelations about Ichigo would be made, but I really didn't want to be spoiled, so I ignored all of that. Harry nodded in understanding and then stood up. Well, no reason to stay here pondering about all of this, might as well deal with what's to come. Let go to Soul Society in about 4 days. Rimuru hopped off the couch and nodded, sounds good. That will also give me some time to go back to Tempest and check how things are doing before we go on another adventure. Harry grinned and Rimuru and nodded, yeah, I have a few things to do for the Digimon Tamers Guild, but it shouldn't take too long. I can't leave things hanging too much over there, otherwise Tony will have a breakdown. Rimuru laughed at Tony's situation. That man does not like administrative work, but it says a lot about him that he's willing to do this for the DG Destined. It seems like having a daughter in Morgan has made him change quite a bit, and for the better. 4 days later. Both Harry and Rimuru spent the last 4 days setting things up and making sure everything would be alright in their absence. In Tempest, everyone in charge of things pretty much had everything down, though Rimuru did have to sneak away, otherwise, Shin would have forced herself on this trip. Harry just made sure that things were going to run smoothly in the guild, though with Izzy, Yuli, and Tony dealing with things there wasn't anything to worry about. So, both Slime and Dragon God left for Karakura town early in the morning via a portal. Both soon arrived in the room that had been set up for the Kurosaki family to visit whenever, a room built by Harry in the very same Kurosaki household. Rimuru was pretty excited to visit this world. In his past human life, he had been a fan of Bleach, so getting to see more of this world was pretty exciting for him. Sure, he met Yuryuki and had quite the nerd attack about that, but getting to see this world with Harry was a whole different thing. Both he and Harry soon walked out of the room designated as the portal room and walked into the living room of the Kurosaki household. Yuzu and Karin, who had been watching TV, immediately turned their heads to see who was coming over, only to see Harry and Rimuru stepping out of the room. Yuzu immediately stood up and went to give her brother in all but blood a big hug in greeting. Harry hugged Yuzu back with a small warm smile and then gave her a head pat. Hey Yuzu, how have you been? Yuzu looked up and smiled at Harry. I've been great, big bro. I learned a ton of new recipes from Himiko-chan and I've gotten even stronger as well. I'll be able to kick your butt in no time soon. Harry chuckled at Yuzu's excitement. Meanwhile, Karin huffed as she got off the couch and walked over to Harry and Yuzu. You can kick his butt now, Yuzu. I don't think Big Bro would fight back against you, you know. Yuzu pouted at her twin sister. Harry smiled at Karin and pulled her into a one-armed hug, which got Karin to grumble, but she didn't do anything against it. In fact, she had a small shy smile on her face. And you, Karin? How have you been? Karin looked up towards Harry and gave him a shrug. Meh, it's been okay, a bit boring with Hope and Morgan gone, but other than that, it's been about the same. Where are they anyways? Harry hummed for a bit before he answered Karin's question. I think they're in another world with Yuryuki and Konako, something about giant transforming robots. They're testing a weapon we designed in order to improve it. Karin nodded, though she seemed pensive. Yuzu, however, decided to ask her big bro what he was doing here. Hey big bro, what are you doing here anyways? I know you didn't exactly come for a visit since you're very busy right now, right? Harry smiled at Yuzu and nodded. Yeah, but I've been summoned to Soul Society. I decided to just go there and be done with it, since it sounds like it's going to be a bit serious. Yuzu nodded and then frowned a bit. Shouldn't you wait for Ichi and I? If it's really serious you might need some help or a bit of backup. Karin nodded in agreement to her twin's idea. Yeah, knowing your crazy and random luck, things might be too dangerous or serious. Harry chucked at the mention of his very tsundere luck. Well, Ichigo is in school right now and he already misses a lot of it because of his duties as a substitute Shinigami, so I don't want to drag him into whatever is going on. Besides, my buddy Rimuru is coming with me. He's plenty strong and I'm sure he can handle anything that might happen. Both Yuzu and Karin turned to look at Rimuru at the same time, which made him jump a bit from the suddenness of it. Both Karin and Yuzu stared at him for a bit, which only served to make him a bit nervous. Yuzu then suddenly spoke up. Big bro, is this another girlfriend? I don't think I met her. Who is she? Karan nodded. I mean she's cute and all, but she doesn't look that strong. You sure you don't want to take Ichi and I with you? Rimuru was stabbed through by 2 metaphorical arrows right then and there, one in the chest and the other in the back of the head, which made the poor slime wince and slump in both pain and defeat. But I'm a guy. Harry chuckled at his friend's predicament. The poor guy is always getting confused for a girl, but then again, he really looks like one, and the fact that Shin and Shana dress him in girls' clothes often doesn't help his case. Rimuru is a guy, girls, and he's actually a demon lord from Milim's world. He's among the strongest beings there. Both Yuzu and Karan stared at Rimuru even more intensely now, which made him sweat. He nervously raised a hand and waved hello to the twins in hopes of calming down things. Hello there. It's nice to meet you both. Yuzu suddenly hummed and gave Rimuru a check over. Why do I get the sudden urge to dress you in all kinds of different clothes? Karan nodded and hummed as well. Yeah, it's like I just need to see him in a dress or something. I don't even like dresses. Rimuru immediately took a step back and shook his head at high speed. No. No more of that please. Harry. Do something. Harry, however, smiled and turned around. I'm going to go see if Mom is home. I kinda want to talk to her right now. With that said, the dragon god walked away from the situation Rimuru got himself in. Rimuru reached out to Harry while Yuzu made her way towards him. Harry. Don't leave me like this. Brew. Yuzu grabbed Rimuru's wrist and gave him an overly sweet smile. Let's go to my room. I have a few outfits that would look cute on you. Rimuru looked on in despair as Harry walked out of the living room and Yuzu began to pull him upstairs with Karan following them both up the stairs. Having abandoned Rimuru to his fate, Harry walked into the kitchen of the Kurosaki household and found Masaki washing dishes while humming. Though she soon smiled as she sensed Harry stepping into the kitchen, she quickly turned around and gave him a big and warm hug. Harry. How have you been? Are you eating well? Harry chuckled at Masaki's questions and hugged her back. I've been good mom, busy and all of that, and yes, I've been eating well. You know how the girls are, they always make sure I take care of myself. Masaki smiled and gave Harry a nod. Good. A big boy like you needs to eat a lot. Harry shook his head and smiled at his mother in all but blood. Mom, I'm not a kid anymore, you know? I'm super old now. Masaki shrugged and giggled in amusement. Embarrassing her 2 sons was her favorite thing to do after all. Nonsense, you and Ichigo will always be my little boys, doesn't matter how big and old you get. Harry sighed. He and Ichigo have always gotten this treatment from Masaki, and despite being a bit embarrassed about it, they both quite enjoy having her fret over them. It has made them realize that both of them are a bit of a mama's boys. Know that they mind. Masaki is an awesome mom after all. So Harry just nodded to his mother and accepted his fate. Fine mom. Geez, anyways, where's the old man? Is he being lazy or something? Masaki giggled at the way Harry addressed her husband. Both he and Ichigo treat their father quite harshly at times, but Ishin brought that on himself with his shenanigans. Still, Masaki knew that both Ichigo and Harry respected their father. It was just hard to actually show him that respect, especially when Ishin was acting up and both her sons had to beat him up. He's out on a medical convention in Tokyo, he should be back in a few days. Why? What's going, Harry? The matriarch of the Kurosaki family was very happy that Harry had come over to visit, but she also knew that he had come for something else. Harry is not one to come unannounced. He usually called whenever he was coming over to be with them or to just spend some family time with the Kurosakis as family. So, something must be going on. Harry sighed and smiled at Masaki. Can never hide anything from you, hey? Masaki just grinned at Harry and nodded. That's right. No one can fool a mom, much less their sons. Now spill, mister, what's going on? Harry chuckled in amusement. Masaki has always been a kind and caring mother, but there were moments where she showed this youthful exuberance that just made her shine. With that in mind, Harry then began to explain why he came for a visit and what he was going to be doing. Masaki silently and patiently waited for Harry to tell her everything. Soon enough Harry finished explaining and Masaki stood there with a very expressive and pensive face. The captain commander of the Shinigami wants to speak with you? That's kind of serious, right? I remember Ichigo and you telling me how powerful and imposing that man is, given how old he is and that he holds a high rank among the Soul Society, then whatever he summoned you for must be serious. Do you think it's because of your title? Harry shook his head. No, I think Genri Yusai knows I'm the master of death and he has shown me some sort of respect before, but he's never said anything to anyone nor made any moves about it either. In fact, he seems content to just let me do as I please and cover for me. kind of disturbing actually, especially with how much of a hard ass he is to everyone else. Masaki nodded at Harry, that's true, then what could it be? It can be the Hollows. Ichigo and his friends have been taking care of them lately and attacks have been scarce to begin with. It can't be the Arrancar either, we haven't sensed any of them lately either. Harry hummed as he absorbed the information Masaki just told him. Honestly, I have no clue what the old man wants, it could be just about anything really. Masaki scratched her head in confusion, she honestly had no idea what the Shinigami would want from Harry, most of them don't really like him, he does have some friends among the captains and their lieutenants, but most of the citizens of Soul Society steer clear from him. Still, Masaki had one last concern, what about that rejection you told me about? Can it still affect you? Harry shook his head, no, I'm way more powerful than what I was back then, there's no way the rejection can affect me as it did when I was weakened and not as strong as I am now, don't worry mom, I'm going to be okay, besides, I brought help as well. Masaki raised an eyebrow and on cue, Yuzu and Karin stepped into the kitchen while dragging a complaining Rimuru. Harry snorted when he saw the poor demon lord and the clothes his little sisters dressed him with. Rimuru groaned when he heard Harry snort and soon after glared at him. The poor slime had been dressed in Yuzu's school uniform, his hair was even tied into twin ponytails, which only served to hurt Rimuru's pride even more. Yuzu immediately pointed at Rimuru and called out to Harry, big bro. Look, doesn't Rimuru look pretty and cute? Karin grinned and nodded, I usually don't like clothing like this, but it suits him pretty well. Harry looked like he was trying not to laugh so very hard, Rimuru just glared at him, as if daring him to do it, but Harry held strong, he sure does look cute, and prettier. I mean, yeah, he looks pretty. Rimuru frowned at Harry while pointing his finger at him, you bastard. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Don't you feel bad with the way my manhood keeps getting trampled on like this? It's bad enough that Shana and Shin do this to me. But now your sisters too. Go to hell. Harry lost it and began to laugh hard at Rimuru, he was soon joined by the giggles and laughter of Yuzu, Karin, and Masaki, which only served to hit the poor demon lord's pride even more. Poor Rimuru, he just dropped to his knees and hands while crying waterfalls from his eyes and whispering of how unfair the world was to him, was the only thing that could be heard from the poor defeated slime. After poking fun at Rimuru for a while, Harry and his slimy friend left the Kurosaki household after saying their goodbyes to Yuzu, Karin, and Masaki. Once they were away from the house and in a desolate park, Harry opened a dark corridor and both he and Rimuru stepped through. Soon enough, both stepped out of the dark corridor, right into the middle of Soul Society. Rimuru was awed at the place and immediately looked around, he quickly caught sight of the tower where Rukia was held captive during the Soul Society arc. He then saw the pedestal where she was held to serve her death sentence, of course, the massive spear that was once there, was now gone, Ichigo had destroyed it and it seemed like the Shinigami never got around to fixing it or even getting a new one. The Demon Lord then looked around some more and saw the massive wall surrounding Soul Society. Looks like the barrier is still active, hey? Did you use your dark corridors when you invaded this place? Harry shook his head and chuckled, no, I didn't know how to use the dark corridor back then, we got through in a Reishi bubble and got shot through a massive cannon, it was fun. Rimuru grinned, he just knew that Harry was the only one who enjoyed getting shot through a cannon to break through the barrier surrounding Soul Society, he kinda wanted to ask Ichigo and the others what their reaction was. Harry suddenly grinned and summoned Oblivion just in time to block a downward slash from above, a loud clang echoed throughout the area and a massive shockwave shook the ground, the dragon god looked up and was met with an insane grin, hello Kenpeki, seems like you just couldn't wait to say hello hey. Rimuru gaped at the fact that he was in front of one of the most popular characters in this world, none other than motherfucking Kenpeki Zaraki, holy shit. Kenpeki chuckled and gave Harry a bloodthirsty look and smile, Harry Potter, it's been a while. And I even heard that you've become even stronger than before. Show me. Kenpeki pushed down on his Zanpakuto even harder thinking he would be able to push Harry aside, something he did the first time he faced off against him, however, to his surprise, Harry didn't even budge, his arm didn't as much as trembled, Harry just stared back at Kenpeki in amusement as he held his blade back with ease, I'm surprised you even found me, you're horrible with directions after all. Without even waiting for Kenpeki to say anything, Harry lightly swung Oblivion to the side and parried away Kenpeki's blade. Kenpeki had to flip in midair and land on his feet to avoid getting sent rolling back and away from Harry. Kenpeki immediately looked up and stared as Harry stood there, in front of him completely relaxed and calm. For some reason, it made Kenpeki both excited and nervous and he loved it. You have gotten stronger, I still remember how you and Ichigo were able to cut me. Back then, both of you were terrified of me, but you stood your ground and faced me head on. Now look at you, standing there tall and strong. It makes my blood boil in excitement." Harry chuckled and shook his head. "I told you before, didn't I? I would return and give you a beating for almost bisecting me in half back then. I almost died that day, Kenpeki, and I never forgot that." Harry raised his other hand and summoned Oathkeeper. With both light and dark keyblades, Harry got into his battle stance. Kenpeki grinned in excitement and immediately took off his eye patch. His spiritual pressure immediately burst out of his body, sending shockwaves all over the place from around him. But despite the constant current of spiritual pressure Kenpeki was letting off, Harry just stood there completely unaffected with a smile on his face. Meanwhile, Rimuru stood at the side completely in awe at watching these two clash like this. "Man, this looks like something straight out of an anime." Rimuru suddenly felt something or someone climb up his back, so he looked back only to see a head full of pink hair. Soon enough a round and cute face showed itself to him, causing Rimuru to widen his eyes in surprise. After all, he recognized the little girl on his back. Yachiru didn't care about the gaping face Rimuru was making right now. She was more curious about him, since he felt odd to her. "Hey there, mister. Who are you? What are you doing here? Are you a friend of Harry? And are you fighting Kenny too? 'Cause that would be very fun for him." Despite the rapid-fire questioning he just got hit with, Rimuru couldn't help but grin and chuckle a bit. "I'm Rimuru, I'm here visiting with Harry. Yes, I'm his friend, and I don't think Kenny will be able to fight me after Harry." Yachiru tilted her head and hummed, "Why is that?" Rimuru shrugged, which made Yachiru wobble and laugh. The Demon Lord then just grinned at Yachiru and then said, "Well, that's because Harry looks like he's not going to be holding back." And indeed, Harry's eyes were glowing as he got ready to fight Kenpeki. The Dragon God seemed excited to beat down the Shinigami who beat him and Ichigo to an inch of their lives back when they invaded Soul Society. It looked like it was time for a little payback. So, Harry soon let his energy explode outwards, filling the area with white light and pitch-black darkness. The waves of twilight soon began to flow out of him in a stream of energy that flowed upwards. Harry's twilight energy and Kenpeki's spiritual pressure soon clashed, causing the entirety of Soul Society to tremble, something that alerted everyone here, that something was happening. Harry suddenly crouched down and got ready while Kenpeki maniacally grinned and raised his Zanpakuto, ready to battle against the Dragon God. Chapter 219. Rimuru watched with excitement in his eyes as both Harry and Kenpeki blurred out of sight and began to clash all over the place. Shockwaves shook the very air while loud clangs filled the area. Yachiru, who was still hanging from Rimuru's back, narrowed her eyes struggling to even catch sight of the fighters. Meanwhile, Genri Yusai, the captain commander who was meditating, suddenly sighed as a particular powerful shockwave shook his chamber. The old Shinigami opened an eye and looked completely tired. "Those two fools, they better not destroy the district they're on." At the same time, in the Shinigami Research Institute, researchers were running around all over the place in a panic as many of their scanners and computers began to explode. Sirens and warning sounds echoed through the hallway of the institute as chaos descended on everyone in here. Mayuri Kuratsuki, the captain of the 12th Division in the Godi I-13, was looking through a screen of one of the only working computers in the institute. However, he had a frown on his face. "Why aren't we getting any readings? Are we even recording anything?" A researcher who was typing at high speed nearby suddenly spoke up. "Sir, they're moving too fast and Harry Potter's unknown energy is burning all scanners. We can't record anything." Mayuri growled in anger and turned around to face everyone. "Then do something about it. I want readings and scans. I want to know what energy that blasted dragon is using. It's not spiritual pressure. Find out what it is." The researchers around Mayuri jumped and immediately got to do what they were ordered, though many would soon find out that it would be impossible to do so. In another building, this one named the 4th Division Barracks where the Shinigami act as court healers, a young man named Hanataro Yamada, suddenly jumped in shock as the building unexpectedly shook. "Eek! What was that?" Isane Katetsu, a young woman of white hair and a lieutenant in the 4th Division, grunted as another shockwave hit the barracks and made her lose her balance. "That's Captain Zaraki's spiritual pressure. He must be fighting someone." Suddenly, a soft and calm voice called out to everyone, "Calm down and prepare. Captain Zaraki must be fighting a powerful foe. He's fighting at full force. We must be ready for the injured." Hanataro and Isane immediately heeded their captain's words and began to run around to prepare for whatever may happen. Now alone, the woman who had just issued the orders smiled. "Well then, this is interesting. Who are you fighting, child? that you felt the need to stop holding back. This woman is none other than Retsuo Nohana, captain of the 4th Division, though, despite smiling, she had an odd and aggressive look in her eyes, one that carried a hint of excitement. In another part of Soul Society, a young black-haired man opened his eyes from his quiet thinking. The young man frowned as he felt the shockwaves shaking the building. Suddenly, a young man came into the room where he was resting and called out to him, "Captain Kukaki. Captain Zaraki is fighting someone." Byakuya Kukaki, captain of the 6th Division, closed his eyes again and huffed, "Renji, you told me that Harry Potter would be coming over to speak with the captain commander, that's who Captain Zaraki is most likely fighting right now." Renji widened his eyes and then huffed in annoyance, "Damn it! Captain Zaraki must have ambushed Harry. But he was warned of how powerful Harry has become, right? Didn't Captain Yamamoto order him to leave him alone?" Byakuya nodded, "Of course he did, but do you believe he would listen?" Renji looked down and shook his head, "No, of course not." Byakuya suddenly stood up and began to walk towards the doorway, "Come Renji, I want to see how strong Harry Potter has become in all of this time." Renji moved away from the doorway and Byakuya soon stepped out. Renji however raised an eyebrow, not expecting his captain to be this curious about Harry's strength. Well, either way, Renji soon followed Byakuya. He was curious as well after all. In another building, Rukia, who was serving some tea, dropped the teapot she was using when a shockwave hit the building and shook the place. The 2 men she was serving tea to looked up with a curious look on their faces. Jaishur Yukatake, captain of the 13th Division, looked over to Rukia. "Didn't you mention that Harry was coming over to a visit, Rukia?" Rukia nodded, "Yes, but who would he be fighting? He was supposed to be coming for a meeting with Captain Yamamoto." The other man drinking tea with Jaishur suddenly chuckled, "It's obvious who would challenge Harry right now." Jaishur chuckled and nodded, "Shunsui is right Rukia, only one person would actually dare to try their luck against Harry, even after hearing from Ichigo, just how powerful he's become." Shunsui Kirikou, captain of the 1st Division, chuckled again and nodded, "I kinda want to see Harry mop the floor with Kenpeki." Rukia's sweat dropped at the comment made by Shunsui, while Jaishur smiled in amusement. That's not really how a captain should speak about another captain, was the last thing Rukia thought as everyone got up to go check the battle out. In another building, a woman known as Ranjaku Matsumoto was suddenly awakened from her sleep and sent falling to the ground in a heap. Though she quickly recovered and stood up in alarm, she wildly looked around only to see her captain working on his desk, not at all caring of the shaking around him. Ranjaku stared at her captain in disbelief for a few seconds before calling out to him, "Toshiro! What's going on? Are we under attack again? Is it Ichigo and his friends?" Toshiro Hitsugiya didn't even look up. He continued to work on his paper, though he did speak to answer Ranjaku's questions. "First of all, it's Captain Hitsugiya, second, it's probably Captain Zaraki and Harry, he is scheduled to make a visit, and third, get back to work." Ranjaku pouted at Toshiro, disappointed that he wasn't reacting to anything happening right now. "Aren't you curious about Harry's power? We heard a lot about it from Rukia and Renji, so everyone has been very curious about just how powerful he's become." Toshiro stopped working and put his pen down. He sighed and then nodded, "Of course I'm curious. He was already very powerful when he invaded the Soul Society, and he only grew more and more powerful as time went on. Honestly, I can't even imagine just how strong he's become now." Ranjaku grinned and then excitedly fist-pumped, "Then let's go and see." Toshiro stared at Ranjaku for a few seconds, pondering whether he should go or not, but he soon stood up and nodded. Ranjaku cheered, and together with her captain, both left to see the battle. Meanwhile, a powerful shockwave once again shook Soul Society, as Kenpeki was sent flying towards the ground and crashed against it hard. He was soon followed by Harry, who fell down knee first into Kenpeki's chest. Despite getting hit hard, Kenpeki still managed to lash out at Harry with his Zanpakuto. Though the Dragon Lord easily blocked the attack with Oathkeeper, he still got off Kenpeki with a quick jump and landed a fair distance away. Kenpeki immediately got up to one of his knees and coughed up some blood. Harry stared at him as Kenpeki recovered from the hit. The battle-hungry captain looked up and grinned at Harry. "Amazing, that hesitation you used to have when we fought is completely gone, you attack with everything now. Seems like you finally stopped being afraid of your own strength. Your true self has finally awakened, Harry." Harry frowned and then sighed, "Hesitation, hey. I guess I did have some back when I came to Soul Society, though you're wrong to think it was because I was afraid. Back then, something was rejecting me in this place, and that made me struggle. That struggle was making me way weaker than I was, but now? That's not the case, Nothing is holding me back now, and that rejection is gone as well, or rather, I can't feel it anymore. Still, I did learn to be extra brutal with stubborn assholes like you." Kenpeki laughed and then launched himself towards Harry at high speed. He instantly tried to slash at Harry, but the dragon god moved to the side and let the attack sail past him. Kenpeki wasn't done though. He quickly used Shunpo to appear behind Harry and lash out with another attack. This time, however, and to Harry's surprise, he used both of his hands to attack. Harry immediately swung Oblivion upwards and parried Kenpeki's attack. Despite Kenpeki using both hands and thus attacking with double the power, Harry was still able to push him back, but Kenpeki didn't seem to be angry or anything. On the contrary, he was smiling like a maniac at the fact that Harry parried his attack with ease. The dragon god narrowed his eyes, feeling quite annoyed at the fact that Kenpeki was enjoying himself right now, so he did the one thing he knew would annoy the captain. As Kenpeki was pushed back from Harry's parry, the dragon god jumped back and pointed both Oathkeeper and Oblivion towards Kenpeki as he moved away from him. Ragnarok. Kenpeki's eyes widened as black energy and white energy gathered at the tips of Oblivion and Oathkeeper. He quickly tried to move away, but Harry's magical technique shot forward too fast and Kenpeki found himself barraged by powerful and explosive small orbs of light and darkness. The magical nature behind Harry's technique helped bypass Kenpeki's spiritual defense and caused him to roar in pain as he was sent flying back and crashing against a building. Harry soon landed on his feet not too far away and stared towards where Kenpeki had crashed, waiting for him to come out. After all, he knew that his magical attack wasn't enough to defeat the bloodthirsty fool. At the same time, Harry's use of magic drew the attention of someone who had been hiding within the shadows of Soul Society. A man with long black hair and a beard, wearing a white quinsy coat and a cape, turned his sight towards the battle going on inside Soul Society and stared in surprise as he watched Harry used an energy he hadn't felt before for a long time. "It's that boy again, he's back in the Soul Society. Did Genri Yusai summon him here because my Quincy's are attacking Hueco Mundo and the Aaron Cars? This man is none other than Wywak, the monarch of the Wandenreich and father of the Quincy, son of the Soul King, a being who has lived for over 1,000 years and has been keeping an eye on everything that has happened in the Soul Society as of late. So the Quincy King is aware of Harry and of his unusual powers. Still, even with him getting involved in the affairs of the Shinigami, Wywaka's omni-precognition never showed Harry Potter to be a threat to his plans, but now that he was back, Wywaka's precognition was no longer working. He couldn't see into the future anymore, shocking the Quincy King. What's is happening? What does this mean? As Wywak pondered this new situation, something that had never happened to him before, he was made to jump in alert when Harry suddenly narrowed his eyes and moved his gaze towards the direction the Quincy King was looking at him from. Wywak quickly looked away, closing his view of Harry, but for some reason, he was feeling an odd sense of foreboding now, one that was weighing down on his very soul. Harry looked in confusion towards the shadows to the side. It was for about a second, but he sensed someone looking at him. Suddenly, a system notification appeared in Harry's sight, which surprised him a bit. It's been quite a while since he had received a quest from the system, aka death. He quickly tried to read it, but Kenpeki chose this moment to burst out from the area he crashed into, forcing Harry to block the series of slashes from a maniac. "Kenpeki, I hate that magic of yours. It hurts. What happened with having honor in a sword fight?" Harry huffed in annoyance. "Don't force your close-minded ideals on me. When I fight I don't limit myself. But since you hate magic so much, then let me show you what I can really do with it." Rimuru, who was on top of a building and watching the fight, grinned. He then waved at Harry and said, "Got it. Leave it to me, Harry." Harry grinned as he pushed Kenpeki back and launched himself towards him. Rimuru then raised a hand and began to gather his mana. Yachiru, who was still on his back, tilted her head and decided to ask a question. "What are you doing?" Rimuru smiled at Yachiru and then explained, "I'm just giving Harry a place where he can fight and go all out without worrying about destroying the Soul Society or hurting innocents." Rimuru then snapped his finger and a barrier appeared around Harry and Kenpeki. With a wave of his hand, the area inside the barrier expanded and expanded until it became the size of an entire city. Rimuru even created buildings inside of the barrier to add more character to the expanded area he just made for Harry and Kenpeki. Yachiru clapped and smiled, impressed with what Rimuru had done. Suddenly a voice called out from behind Rimuru and Yachiru, "Interesting, you created a barrier, and inside you expanded space and time to create a different domain within the barrier." Rimuru turned around and narrowed his eyes when he saw who it was that spoke. Mayuri grinned upon seeing the glare Rimuru was giving him. He found it amusing. "Ho? Looks like you already know who I am. I'm sure Harry told you all about me, but don't worry, all I need is a sample from you, so don't struggle." "What? The moment Mayuri tried to step towards Rimuru, the slime let the full force of his demon lord aura explode outwards, causing the area around him to grow heavy and for Mayuri to be assaulted by the dark and oppressive feeling behind Rimuru's aura. Take another step and I'll erase you from existence, freak. Mayuri took a step back and stared into the feral and cold yellow eyes of the demon lord Rimuru. Suddenly, someone chuckled, drawing Rimuru's attention from Mayuri. Shunsui stepped forward and grinned at Mayuri. You deserved that, Captain Kuratsuki. You should know better than to mess with a friend of Harry. They're all scary and way beyond our power. This little girl is just merely letting out her aura. No doubt that this isn't the full force of her power. Best you behave or you will die. Mayuri frowned but nodded. As greedy and self-entitled as he was not stupid nor ignorant. The moment the being in front of him let out its aura, it made his very soul tremble in fear, so Mayuri stepped back with an annoyed look on his face. Rimuru relaxed his aura and looked over to Shunsui, who had Rukia and Jaishur behind him. Stepping forward, Rukia smiled at Rimuru and then spoke up. Lord Rimuru. You came with Harry. Rimuru smiled at Rukia and nodded. The day Harry and he made plans to come to the Soul Society, they had caught up with Yasaka, Rukia, and Renji, where he was introduced to them, so Rukia was fully aware of who and what Rimuru is. Hey Rukia. Yeah, I came with Harry as representative of Neo Kyoto and as support. You never know, right? Rukia nodded, and suddenly a new voice spoke up. Oh? So you know who this is, Rukia? Rukia widened her eyes and immediately turned her head towards where she had heard the voice, only to smile when she saw both Byakuya and Renji arrive. Nii-sama. Byakuya nodded, while Renji waved at Rukia with a grin on his face. Rukia then nodded to Byakuya and began to answer his question. This is Rimuru Tempest, a demon lord and friend of Harry. He's among one of the strongest beings in Neo Kyoto and is someone you don't want as an enemy. Shunsui widened his eyes while everyone turned to look at Rimuru, who shrugged and grinned at everybody. Shunsui suddenly shook his head and seemed very confused. You said he? This is a man? But, that's impossible. Rimuru grinned at Shunsui and said, Meh, I don't have a set gender per se, but I consider myself male. I am slime after all and we're genderless. Shunsui looked down with a look of defeat and despair. Everyone else except Rukia and Renji looked at Rimuru in confusion. Jaishur then decided to ask a question. A slime? What's that? Rimuru chuckled and then suddenly took on his slime form. Yachiru, who was still on his back, dropped down and landed on top of Rimuru, where she bounced up and down on top of him while giggling in fun. The captain stared at Rimuru in shock, while Rukia and Renji tried not to laugh, though they couldn't really blame the captains for reacting like they did. After all, both of them reacted the same way as well. Suddenly, Ranjaku and Toshiro arrived as well, only to look in confusion as they watched the captains gaping at some sort of blue creature. Yachiru jumped down from Rimuru and picked him up above her head and began to stretch his body while laughing in fun. Something Rimuru didn't seem to mind and just let Yachiru have her fun. Ranjaku noticed Rukia and Renji nearby, approached them, and asked them what was happening. Rukia stopped quietly giggling and explained how Rimuru left the captains gaping at his revelation of what he is. Toshiro just sighed at his fellow captain's reaction and walked over to the edge of the building they were on to take a look at the fight between Harry and Kenpeki. Kenpeki stood up and looked around with interest. What did you do? Where are we, Harry? Harry just stood up straight and quickly explained. We're in an expanded dimension surrounded by a barrier. We can now go all out without any worry of destroying anything or hurting anyone. Kenpeki grinned like a maniac again and then, a second later, began to laugh out loud while Harry raised an eyebrow in confusion. Kenpeki soon stopped laughing and looked into Harry's eyes. Such an amazing thing, think of all the battles I could have without any worries. I want to learn how to do this, Harry. Harry of course chuckled and shook his head. Sorry, but you need a lot of training on different branches of magic to be able to pull this off, and you hate magic, right? Kenpeki stopped smiling and glared at Harry. He knew that the dragon god was mocking him. However, Harry soon shrugged and got ready. Anyways, even if you wanted to learn about magic, I sure as hell wouldn't teach you, asshole. Harry pointed oblivion towards Kenpeki as his mana exploded out of his body. Kenpeki widened his eyes in alarm as he sensed the amount of mana Harry was using for whatever he was trying to do. Meanwhile, Harry began to chant his spell, reflect on thy sins, they smite with blackened blade. Execution. The spell came too fast for Kenpeki, who didn't even know where it was coming from, so when 4 spirals of dark astral energy sprouted from the ground and rose up to the sky, he was completely caught off guard. A giant beam of energy then crushed Kenpeki before the energy rose up, forming a cross as Kenpeki was relentlessly launched into the air while being crushed in the middle of the energy cross. Kenpeki roared in pain as the dark energies within the spell inflicted damage to his body. The reason Kenpeki hated Harry's use of magic spells was because they were always able to bypass his defenses and hit him hard. That's how he was defeated by Harry and Ichigo the first time Kenpeki fought them. Harry hit him with every debuff spell he knew back then, weakening Kenpeki quite a bit, while Ichigo fought against him and Kenpeki ended up not only losing the fight but severely injured as well. This was also different. Back then, Harry's offensive spells hardly did anything to Kenpeki. Even when they were able to bypass his defenses, he just didn't have the magical might he possessed now. Something Kenpeki was finding out now the hard way, but Kenpeki was not one to call it quits because of a little pain, so with a roar he let his spiritual pressure explode, which caused an explosion from the spell and his spiritual pressure colliding against each other. The explosion sent Kenpeki flying back, but he recovered in mid-air, only to have to quickly dodge Oathkeeper. The Keyblade came flying at him at high speed like a buzzsaw out of nowhere, forcing Kenpeki to use Shunpo to get away after dodging it. Though Kenpeki was then forced on the defensive immediately, as Harry was already waiting for Kenpeki, Harry's Oblivion crashed against Kenpeki's Zanpakuto with a tremendous amount of force, much more than what Kenpeki experienced a moment ago. But the captain wasn't allowed to think more about this and was then kicked away to the side when Harry spun in midair and lashed out with a spinning kick that landed on Kenpeki's side. A sicking cracking sound echoed through the area before Kenpeki was sent twirling away from Harry and screaming in pain. Meanwhile, Harry summoned Oathkeeper back to his hand and pointed it towards Kenpeki as he crashed and bounced against the ground a few times. Kenpeki soon stabbed his Zanpakuto into the ground, stopping himself from flying further back. He quickly looked over to Harry, only for Kenpeki to hear him chanting a spell, "Light of the horizon, etch your name into fate." Sunburst. A massive orange orb of plasma and flames formed above Harry and then shot upwards. Kenpeki immediately shot forward towards Harry, hoping to get him before his spell came to him, but Harry just smiled and suddenly disappeared from his sight. Kenpeki stopped midway and wildly looked around for both Harry and his spell, but he didn't see either right away until the area was suddenly lit up by an orange bright light coming from above. Kenpeki couldn't help but gape as a literal sun was falling on him from the sky. So shocked he was, that he found himself unable to move and Harry's sunburst spell crashed right above him, detonating on contact and engulfing the area in a massive explosion of plasma and flames. The Shinigami captains and their lieutenants gasped and covered their eyes to protect them from the bright explosion within the expanded barrier Rimuru created. Speaking about the slime, he was now being held by Rangiku under her bust, making the slime blush and smile. Meanwhile, Yachiru was jumping in front of Rangiku while trying to get a hold of Rimuru, since she quite liked playing with his body. The bright light soon subsided and everyone took a look at the explosion that was devastating a big chunk of the expanded area inside the barrier. Renji gaped at the spell Harry used and couldn't help to exclaim, "Fuck! What was that?" Harry never used a spell like that while he was here. He would have destroyed Soul Society with that one spell alone. Byakuya nodded as he narrowed his eyes and watched the explosion run its course. This level of power output, it's so extreme compared with what he was capable of doing. To think the difference in power would be so great, could the Captain Commander even match him now? Everyone silently pondered Byakuya's question, until a new voice made everyone jump. "I'm afraid Harry Potter has reached a level of power I can't even touch." Everyone turned around towards where the voice came from, only to see Genryusai Yamamoto stand there watching as the explosion began to finally lose power. Rimuru couldn't help to gape and stare at the Captain Commander in awe. He was quite literally having an otaku spasm attack in silence, though his body was shaking in excitement, causing Rangiku's chest to vibrate, which Renji noticed and blushed at as he watched the quite amazing sight. Shunsui frowned and immediately asked a question, "Old man, you mean to tell me that Harry is way beyond even you? Even with your Bankai?" Genryusai raised an eyebrow at his young apprentice and fellow captain. "Can you sense Harry Potter's energy, Shunsui? Can any of you do so?" Everyone present immediately tried to sense Harry's energy, but no one had any luck. Mayuri even tried to use one of his portable scanners, but nothing showed up on it. Genryusai silently watched in amusement as everyone failed to realize what this actually meant. "Think, when have we encountered a situation like this?" Everyone pondered the question and began to think hard, but Byakuya quickly realized what Genryusai meant. Aizen and Kurosaki, they both were able to accomplish a feat like this before. Genryusai nodded at Byakuya. "Well done, Captain Kukaki, you are correct. Both young Kurosaki and war criminal Aizen reached a level of power beyond mortal means of sensing and understanding. Even if it was for a short period of time, they both stepped into the realm of the gods." Everyone stared at the Captain Commander in shock. Mayuri grinned and even began to breathe hard. "Harry Potter has become a transcendent being. That's why we can't sense his energy or power level. His power is on an entirely different dimension now. Rimuru stretched a small limb outwards and waved it. Of course, Harry has reached a level of power beyond anything you guys have seen before. You seem to think that he's the same as the time he was in this world. But, this world was actually one of the first Harry lived in. He has long passed many lifetimes living in other worlds and learning new things, always getting even stronger, to the point that he has become a true dragon, a being that transcends time, space, and even creation. Harry has lived for millennia now. He's not the same young boy everyone met so long ago, he's more or less, a being beyond understanding and common sense. The things he can casually do with just a wave of his hand, would break your mind. That's who Harry is now, what he has become. Chapter 220. Zaraki Kenpeki suddenly woke up with a start and wide eyes. He immediately looked around while reaching for his Zanpakuto. However, he growled in frustration when he didn't feel the handle of his sword and began to grow angry. But, before he could do anything, a calm voice called out to him, "Captain Zaraki, calm down." Kenpeki turned his head towards where the voice had come from and calmed down when he caught sight of Anohana. The captain of the healing corps had a calm smile on her face even in the face of a cornered and confused Kenpeki. Anohana suddenly reached behind her and pulled out Kenpeki's Zanpakuto. Kenpeki narrowed his eyes and asked a question, "What's happened?" Anohana smiled and walked forward while explaining, "You were defeated by Harry Potter. He brought you here, dumped you on one of my patients' beds, and left after leaving a message for you." Kenpeki frowned, as he heard Anohana explain how he ended up in the 4th Division barracks. He began to remember just how he was defeated. "I remember fighting Harry, no matter what I did, how I attacked him, I just couldn't even hurt him. It was amazing, never had I been so challenged before, even when he used magic, I was still having fun. The last thing I remember was red-hot flames and pain as I was being burned alive." Anohana nodded and placed Kenpeki's Zanpakuto beside him. "Harry brought you burned to a crisp. You were a lump of charcoal actually, he brought you back to life though. I don't know how, but he was somehow able to bring you back, even though you yourself are only a soul. You should have vanished into Rishi, instead, he rebuilt your whole body and breathed life into it again. I've never seen anything like that before." Kenpeki suddenly grinned and looked very amused. "The bastard actually killed me, ha ha ha. I can't wait to fight him again." Anohana sighed and shook her head. "I'm afraid that will not happen anytime soon." Harry's message was pretty clear on this. Kenpeki gave Anohana a very confused look. "What? What do you mean?" Anohana turned her gaze towards Kenpeki and stared into his eyes. "Harry said to tell you this when you woke up. Grow stronger and stop being an idiot, bond with your Zanpakuto and then come back to challenge me when you do. Otherwise, don't waste my time, I have far more important things to do, than to deal with a weak battle addict or so he said. He even put a curse on you, one that won't let you approach him until you reach a certain level of power. If I were you, Captain Zaraki, I would take this curse very seriously. I've watched how Harry carved it into your very soul. You will feel the painful effects the moment you try to approach Harry." Kenpeki stared back into Anohana's eyes in silence for a few seconds, until he suddenly sighed and looked down. "Son of a bitch, he knew I would hound him for a rematch. Honestly, I'm pretty impressed he cursed me like this." Anohana stared at Kenpeki and watched him as he slowly began to smile, until suddenly he looked up and maniacally grinned. "Well, no matter, all I have to do is bond with my Zanpakuto and grow stronger. I'll pay back Harry for burning me to death, ha ha ha. I will cut his belly open someday." Anohana stared at Kenpeki as the bloodthirsty captain cackled like a madman. "Seems like you have awakened, it's about time. To think it would take you fighting a force beyond even you." Despite smiling, Anohana had a sinister look in her eyes, one that told of excitement and expectation. It seemed like the old her was surfacing in the wake of someone far more powerful around. Deep down, Anohana was thinking of fighting Harry and letting loose once more. Wouldn't that be something to see? Meanwhile, in the captain's meeting room, Harry stood in front of Yamamoto with Rimuru by his side. Both Dragon and Slime were surrounded by the rest of the captains of the Godii 13, well except Anohana and Kenpeki, new and old as well. Within the captains, there were new members. These were actually people Harry knew and he was a bit surprised to see them here, so Harry ignored Yamamoto for a bit and turned his head towards one of them. "So you're a captain again, Shinji? I'm surprised you took your old job back, given how they treated you when you and the other were hollow-fied." Shinji grinned at Harry and then shrugged. "Well, living in the living world was kinda hard for us, so even though we're not happy about the fact that we were made into scapegoats, coming back here made more sense." Love nodded and sighed. "Besides, Seoul society now knows we're alive and where they can find us. Living in Karakura town was just impossible. Kensei shrugged and shook his head. It's not like the Seoul society would leave us alone after the Winter War either. I'm sure they would have eventually hunted us down or something. The rest of the captains nervously began to sweat. What the Vizards just said was true of course, but they didn't say it out loud. They definitely didn't want Harry to hear this either, especially now that they had seen some of what Harry is now capable of now. Harry though, just shrugged and shook his head. Damn if you do, damn if you don't, hey? This certainly seems annoying to deal with. The Vizards nodded in agreement. Suddenly, Swafon spoke up to Harry. Harry, where is Lady Yuryuaki? I haven't seen or heard of her in a while, all I know is that she's living in your world now. Harry nodded. She is, right now she's in another world with my daughter, niece, and her new student. I bet they're having all sorts of adventures and doing all kinds of crazy things to the poor normal people of that world. Swafon nodded, but a second later she froze and her eyebrow began to twitch, which made Harry raise an eyebrow at her. Swafon suddenly frowned and asked another question. A student? Lady Yuryuaki has a new student? Harry nodded. Yup, a young Nikomata named Konako. She's actually mastered Shunko too, so she already surpassed you. Pretty cool if you ask me. To be able to combine a technique like Shunko with the type of energy she possesses is quite the achievement for someone so young. Swafon looked ready to explode, which made the captains around her step away from her. All the while Harry grinned at her as if making fun of her, which made Rimuru's sweat drop and gaze at Harry with apprehension. Hey? I wonder why Harry is gaslighting Swafon like that. Seeing the look on Rimuru's face, Byakuya of all people explained, Harry is well known for hating Captain Swafon. Rimuru turned his head towards Byakuya and tilted his head. Why? Harry is not one to hate people for no reason. Byakuya sighed and nodded. Yes, but Swafon has been rather antagonistic towards Harry. She even tried to kill him multiple times as well, all because that black cat really likes Harry. Rimuru hummed for a little bit until he nodded and then said, Ah, jealousy I see, hey. Harry nodded. Yup, she's just salty that I've seen Yuryuaki naked and she hasn't. Swafon's eyebrow. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you're notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.